This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 3 minutes after 10. A very good morning indeed to you. I mean, it is a big day. There's a lot going on. The COVID inquiry findings and some early indications of some very strange communications there. And of course, you have that Russian spy ship in UK waters or thereabouts, and this Ukraine story. But none of them actually are obvious contenders for the top of the show that we spend together every morning, or most mornings. And of course, if you have missed any shows recently for any reason whatsoever, I will need a letter from your mum by the end of morning break today explaining precisely what your reasons are. It's the difference. I won't bore you with this because I appreciate it's more interesting to me than it is to you, but it is another morning. It is one of those mornings where you recognise the difference between a big story and an interesting conversation. A big story, as in one that demands and dominates headlines, and a big topic, for want of a better word, i.e. something that lends itself to the time that we spend together from 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just mentioning that in passing because it always amuses me or intrigues me that it's sometimes rather hard to spot the distinction. Do you remember when Ukraine was dominating our thoughts and our agenda? The hundreds of thousands of people that made their way here and were offered the warmest of welcomes. The brief window during which even Boris Johnson managed to appear as if he were a world leader of some repute. Everyone conveniently forgot partying with KGB families and somehow anointed him the great defender of Kyiv. And he was greeted with open arms by Volodymyr Zelensky, who seemed to be on the news all the time. And today we find ourselves contemplating the possibility of him being forced or compelled to accept an extraordinary deal that appears to have been cobbled together by one of Vladimir Putin's key cronies and one of Donald Trump's, key cronies. You see the phrase cash for land in the headlines and you think, what on earth could that mean? I mean, you know literally what it means, but it would involve control of the eastern Donbass region being ceded to the Kremlin while still being nominally owned by Ukraine, who would receive rent for surrendering their claims, if you like, or allowing Russia to be their tenants. And, you know, secretive talks, thrashings out, none of which included Kyiv, none of which included Ukraine, the US and Russia to, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime, but two regimes that appear to be a heck of a lot closer to each other than they are to European or indeed British interests. So Ukraine would be forced to surrender territory. The Ukrainian army would be cut in half. Ukraine would be banned from possessing long-range missiles. Ukraine would be banned from deployments of foreign troops on its own territory. US military assistance would be withdrawn. Foreign diplomatic aircraft would be prevented from landing in the country. Russian would be made an official state language, and the Russian Orthodox Church would be given official status in the occupied territories. On the plus side, Ukraine would be permitted to negotiate security guarantees from the US and European governments to help maintain any ceasefire. I mean, it's come out of Trump's camp, apparently. It is clearly a historical fact that Zelensky has repeatedly ruled out surrendering the entire Donbass as the price for peace. But this appears to be the plan to which Donald Trump will attach his hopes of one day securing a Nobel Peace Prize. It is a deal that officials familiar with the process have told newspapers and other members of the media that is very much in the pipeline. It's important also to remember, I think it might be even more important than you initially acknowledge, that there is a massive corruption scandal unfolding in Ukraine, which leaves Zelensky very, very, very exposed. He has dismissed two top officials and imposed sanctions on his own close associates. after his government investigators revealed that $100 million had been embezzled from the energy sector through kickbacks paid by contractors. He's done his best to lance the boil. He's fired people, he's sanctioned people, but the fact that some of these crooks were senior members of Zelensky's circle leaves him very, very and obviously exposed. It's particularly prickly, this issue, because energy power outages have been commonplace since the invasion began, and allegations of corruption in the energy sector are not going to go down well with people that are often denied energy. There are calls for him to remove his long-time chief of staff, not because he's been accused of any wrongdoing, but because they didn't kind of spot the people who have been. And I sometimes say to you, usually at 9 minutes after 10 in the morning, that you may well know more about this subject than I do. And I never say it dishonestly or inauthentically, but sometimes I sort of think that I'm being a bit hard on myself, because I try my very best to follow things. But I realised this morning that I have, if not taken my eye off the ball, because you can only work with what's being put in front of you, but I can't really answer the question of why a conflict, a story, an invasion, why something that really demanded and merited huge amounts of coverage, epic levels of sympathy. It's probably the last thing that everybody in UK politics agreed on, isn't it? Except Farage, of course, who remains Vladimir Putin's biggest fan in the UK. I think his mate, who accepted bribes from a Kremlin stooge for parroting Kremlin talking points, is being sentenced tomorrow. Hey, look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It is perfectly plausible to parrot Kremlin talking points in the European Parliament without having accepted bribes from Kremlin stooges. So, you know, just because the bloke who has accepted bribes says things that sound very like what other politicians have said in exactly the same building doesn't mean you can read into that anybody else has accepted bribes as well. But with the exception of a few traitors, the support for Volodymyr Zelensky, the necessity of resisting the Russian invasion, was the last area on which I can remember all the sorts of biggish beasts of British politics agreeing, past and present. You know, I mean, like the anti-Brexit, if you like, the opposite of Brexit, where it went right down the heart of UK political discourse and engendered agreement. And it doesn't anymore. It's something that's rarely discussed. It's something that's rarely even acknowledged. It's something that we hardly ever talk about. And I don't think it would be remiss of me this morning to ask you why you think that is. Why you think that is. I suppose the most obvious comparison in terms of conflict and a sort of sense of cultural proximity would be the Israeli genocide in Gaza, which was never off the news agenda in this country for a whole variety of reasons. The presence of Ukrainian refugees here in their tens, their hundreds of thousands, would perhaps have created the opposite scenario. You would have had the opposite situation whereby we were going to pay more attention to it because so many communities had welcomed Ukrainian refugees into their midst, into their heart. So 12 minutes after 10 is the time. That's your first question. That's your sort of entry-level question. And all answers welcome, really. Some obvious, some perhaps less so. And then the detail of the deal. There is perhaps going to become a point, and this is something else you can comment on, where Zelensky is left with nowhere else to go. The idea of the USA and Russia acting as one, acting in unison, unthinkable just a decade ago, grimly inevitable in a Trump administration or a Trump regime. But there is going to come a point where if Europe has failed to step into the breach, to step into the vacuum created by Donald Trump's absence of support or failure to ramp up support of Ukraine, then Zelensky is at some point going to have nowhere else to go. And if that place looks like this settlement, if it looks like an arrangement under which They, at least at first, received some money in return for allowing the Kremlin to control illegally invaded land. If they agree not to possess long-range missiles, if they halve their own army, if they are blocked from deploying foreign troops on their own territory, and they cease in many ways to be a sovereign country, I think, under this so-called peace arrangement. And there are two questions here, aren't there? The first is, what would it mean, not so much for Ukraine? I think that's quite easy to work out. It would be a disaster and a humiliation, I think. But what would it mean for the rest of the world? So if you're listening to this with Estonian skin in the game, or Latvian skin in the game, or Polish skin in the game, then what would it mean for you and your countrymen and women, for the Ukrainians to be so roundly abandoned and betrayed by the very administration which historically has secured peace, or at least nominally secured peace across the planet? It's a big one, this, but it's a really, really important one. I don't know if you saw the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia in the Oval Office yesterday. It struck me that nobody asked him why he wasn't wearing a suit. Make of that what you will. But part of the answer to the question of why this story has followed the track that it's followed must be that terrible humiliation of Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office, the moment when the sort of Western Concord collapsed, didn't it? We probably didn't realise at the time what a significant moment that was. For the man resisting illegal Russian imperial ambition to be humiliated and insulted in the Oval Office, in the heart of the US government, is, I mean, extraordinary. And probably, for historians of the future, a point at which an unhappy end to this war from the Ukrainian point of view became inevitable. Because if the US president is in the business of humiliating the president of Ukraine, then what prospect is there of the president of Ukraine being able to successfully resist Vladimir Putin, a man who, like Nigel Farage, Donald Trump appears to hold in the highest regard and to consider to be an absolute hero in political terms. So, two questions to start with. Why has this story dropped off our collective radar? 0345 6060973. Has it elsewhere? I mean, that because the second question then becomes, what would this capitulation compelled by Donald Trump's White House mean initially for Ukraine, but latterly for everybody else, for the rest of Europe? I mean, what the message does it send to the Kremlin? Just hang in there, keep killing, and eventually we'll give you pretty much everything you wanted. Russia isn't going to agree to anything short of a scenario that Vladimir Putin can present to the Russian people as a victory. And even the distorting lens of Russian media, I can't change the fact that this would look like a victory. Officials in the Ukrainian capital have dismissed the plan, but nobody wants perpetual war. Russia have denied knowledge of it, but you can trust the Russian government roughly as far as you could throw it. And the White House is briefing journalists that this is the deal on the table. There's something really grim about this scenario, and I'm not pinning down precisely what it is. There's something deeply troubling about any suggestion that Vladimir Putin is going to walk away from this conflict enhanced and empowered, while Ukraine would walk away from it diminished and insulted. What would that mean? 0345 6060973 for the world, for Europe, for Eastern Europe, and for Ukraine. What would that mean? This settlement that robs them of sovereignty, robs them of autonomy, robs them of military power, robs them of self-determination. But there comes a point where, without full and incredible support from other allies other than the United States, Ukraine is left with nowhere else to turn. And don't underestimate the importance of this corruption scandal at home, because it speaks to the possibility that he will sort of lose what support he still has for continuing the conflict in in the rest of Ukraine among his own people. There's a lot to dig into today, and I am going to need your help. So don't feel, because I don't, unqualified or underqualified. We're having a conversation in the first instance about why something we talked about all the time has been permitted to fade into the ether, to fade into the distance. Why do you think that is? And secondly, if this is the deal, if this is what the end looks like, what on earth does that do to the region and to the world? 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 10, and while the European Union is insisting that there can be no settlement without cooperation from them, and more obviously from Ukraine, from Kyiv, from Zelensky, it's hard to avoid the suspicion that this is evidence of a carve-up, a new world order, if you like, where Putin and Trump's key consigliere can sit down and decide what happens to Ukraine, a country, a people that has courageously resisted illegal imperialist aggression in a way that very quickly won the admiration of the world. So where has that admiration gone? Kathy's in Warrington. Kathy, what would you like to say?
Well, my main concern was that British troops were going to be drawn into this, and our people would get killed. Okay. Now that seems to be off the front list now, and that's why I'm less concerned. I feel very sorry for the Ukrainian soldiers who've died. I think it's appalling. This, my family, we've lost wars in these lost sons in these continental wars years ago, and
what you mean resisting Nazis?
Well, the point I'd like to make, how do you turn a war...
I'm just clarifying, those are the continental wars we're talking about, or at least the main one.
It was both my grandmother, great-grandmothers, and now lost their brothers in the First World War. They just sent out something that's nothing to do with us. It's a border squabble between Germany and France.
But let's talk about the Second World War, because that's more akin to resisting Putin. Resisting Hitler and resisting Putin would be ideologically closer.
I would like to make the point here. Yeah. I would like to see Ukraine super peace, and the thing is about that, there are better, bigger, powerful forces than them who've had to be humiliated, step back and throw in the towel, so to speak. I'm talking about the Empire of Japan, proud, warlike people, and in the end they had to lower down and say, stop this, we give in, and they were completely humiliated I'm going to with Germany, a proud warlike nation, and they had to.
So we are talking about the Nazis
throw in the towel
now.
And say we're finished. We can't do it anymore.
Okay.
And that's what Ukraine are going to have to do. It's unbearable to...
I'm going to have to object to you comparing Nazi Germany with Volodymyr Zelensky's Ukraine. I think
I said Japan as well. I'm just not picking on one.
I think that's disgusting.
I mean, all of them.
I truly think that's disgusting.
What? Sorry?
To conflate Hitler with Zelensky, to compare Nazi Germany to Ukraine, a proud warlike country like Germany. You did. I heard you say it.
The point I'm making...
A proud warlike country like Nazi Germany.
I phoned in. I'm paying for this call, and I want to say what
Did we not ring her back? Did we not ring Kathy back? No, I mean, you've said what you've said, and I've described it as disgusting. I hope you're wrong. I hope the reason why we've lost focus on the plight of the Ukrainian people isn't because of ladies in Warrington who compare them to Nazis. But I mean, that's the Putin line, isn't it? I suppose that's what came out of the Kremlin, the idea that they had to launch this war because Ukraine was full of Nazis. But, you know, all human life is here. Cormac is in Kennington. Cormac has contributed frequently to LBC phone-ins, both as a caller and indeed as an invited guest on other programmes, a former strategic communications advisor to the former Foreign Affairs Minister of Ukraine, Pavlo Klimkin. Let's take it from the top, Cormac. This is ugly, right?
James, good morning, and thanks very much for having me on.
You're welcome.
It's horribly ugly, and it brings back... I mean, I reached the zenith of my rage and disgust with that Oval Office meeting that you referred to earlier.
Yes.
I was actually on holidays in Spain, and I was called by another station, Times Radio, And I did a interview saying how it was a setup and so forth.
What a shame! What a shame! No one would have heard it, Cormac. Very briefly, how significant was that moment? I mean, looking back now, I mean, you clearly.
I think looking back now, James, it was hugely significant. You know, I went on, and I won't name it, yet another station, not LBC, about a year and a half ago, and I said Trump was in Putin's pocket, and I was challenged. Yeah. I was challenged by the interviewer, and I was also challenged by Greg Swenson, who is the chair of Republicans abroad. And I was said, did I stand by it? And I said, yes, absolutely, I did.
And you would argue that the proof of that particular pudding is being served up today.
It's crazy. Look, this deal is a non-starter. This deal has been cooked up between, forget about their advisors, this deal has been cooked up between Trump and Putin. It is a proposal for Ukraine to capitulate. And if I can just say one or two really important things to understand.
Yes, of course.
The 25% of the Donbass, which they are now insisting that Ukraine give up, Russia has been unable to take that in almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Compare that to the Second World War, where in the same period of time, Russia went from the outskirts of Moscow to the outskirts of Berlin. Russia is not being successful here. But the important point, James, about this particular 25% of the Donbass, it is heavily fortified. It is a gateway to Kyiv and to the rest of Ukraine. So combine Ukraine giving that up, which I would suggest they simply cannot. Combine that with demands that their army be cut by a factor of 2.5 is the figure that I have seen, and also that they give up many of their heavy weapons. It's been suggested any of the heavy weapons that America has given them, they simply give up. This is leaving Ukraine a sitting duck until Russia replenishes its forces
and starts again.
Its breath,
and starts again, because why wouldn't it?
For the rest. It will come back for the rest. Because,
so it looks to me then, and I suspect you're going to agree, it looks to me as if Witkoff has said to, or Trump has said to Putin, or Witkoff has said to the Russian envoy, can you just draw us a little map of what you would agree to?
It sounds very much like that. And my fear is, I mean, I don't believe, and look, this is where, you know, many friends I have in Ukraine, obviously, but I can't speak for them. But this is where I believe Ukraine simply cannot accept this.
When do they have to? When do they have to, Cormac? When do they have to? So if you factor in losses, corruption scandals, lack of US support, and what support they currently enjoy is likely to be reduced or removed if they don't agree to whatever Donald Trump thinks will make him look good in the context of the next news cycle, and damn the future, damn the next month, the next year, the next generation, or the next decade, whatever will make him feel good for the next 24 hours. When all of those planets start aligning, when, or indeed if, does Ukraine have to agree to whatever terms are presented to simply stop the shooting in the short term?
Right. Let me quote two good friends of mine,
Go on.
both ambassadors at the moment.
Yeah.
Alexei Mikhailov, who's Ukraine's man in Berlin at the moment, said to me within the first weeks of the further invasion, we were having a call.
Yeah.
He was under a lot of pressure. He said, Cormac, it's very simple. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine.
Yeah.
And another quote that comes to mind from a man who I mean, these are people that I will call friends for life, that I've not just worked with. Another man who is currently Kyiv's man in South Africa, Alexander Sherba, said to me once, we will fight on with shovels. This is absolutely existential. Putin has told us that he does not believe Ukraine is a real country. He has already, I would say, and I know we talk about genocide, but I would already put forward, as would Professor Timothy Snyder from Yale University, that actually Russia has passed all 5 tests in the United Nations Convention. Look at Mariupol, for one example. The Nazis killed 20,000 in 2 years. The absolute lowest estimate of the number of civilians killed in Mariupol in 7 weeks is 25,000. Some say it could go as high as 100,000. A city the size of Edinburgh deliberately wiped off the map. I have a friend, Sean Pinner, who I made through this, former British soldier who fought in the defence of Mariupol, was captured, tortured, sentenced to death, got out.
And the deal,
I speak to this guy every day.
The deal as it is affords impunity to the Russians for anything that's been undertaken up to and including the moment of invasion. The thing I don't know, and you may not know this either, but I'm going to ask you anyway, is that tightening of the vice, because fighting on with shovels notwithstanding and the courage of the Ukrainian people notwithstanding, there does come a point, there must come a point where all other options have been closed down. The corruption scandal is being cited as part of that vice tightening exercise. The lack of American support, the loss of American support, the failure perhaps of Europe to really step up to the breach, despite making all the right noises, mostly in the right order. Can you not conceive of a moment where whoever is in charge of Ukraine, whether it's Volodymyr Zelensky or not, will have no choice but to roll over because of the American position, not the Russian position? That hasn't changed at all, but the American position is the key one here, and it leaves Ukraine sooner rather than later, perhaps, but definitely eventually with nowhere else to turn, or not.
2 points, James, and let me try and be optimistic as well as realistic.
Okay.
Right. The whole corruption thing is appalling, and it's unfortunate, and it is going to make things difficult. But I think the thing that's important here, ultimately, because Ukraine is a democracy, and ultimately, and it's, I don't know Vladimir Zelensky, it's ordinary Ukrainians and Ukrainian government people I speak to.
But they could run
ultimately,
out.
It's down to the Ukrainian people, and I sense absolutely no will among my friends to give up. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is important to note, is Ukraine is far, far less dependent on American support now than they were in earlier years of the war. It used to be that Ukraine was producing a tiny, tiny amount of their own armaments. They are now producing over 60% of their frontline armaments. Europe has stepped up, not enough.
Okay.
We had Belgium block the 200 billion last month. We're hoping that will go through in December. That now becomes more critical than ever before. Ukraine is developing more and more of its own weapons. But here's the thing. And I spoke to a good friend in Kyiv this morning, and we agreed on this. Here's the thing.
Go on.
The one thing that America provides is intelligence. And that is the one thing America provides that Ukraine or Europe cannot quite replace. This, I predict, is the pressure point that Trump will go for. He has withdrawn military intelligence before for a period of 2 weeks, and it was hugely costly for Ukraine because it cuts down their ability to detect incoming stuff and to target their own outgoing stuff.
So they could, I mean, to be pessimistic then, they could contribute to or create the situation in which Zelensky's options are cut off. But you're absolutely right to remind us that ultimately it comes down to the will of the Ukrainian people, which, has been tested to the nth degree already. Thank you, Cormac. It's always a pleasure. I'm late for the news. I could have listened to you for even longer, but the picture you've drawn is one that the rest of us can now analyse and examine. I'll allow a moment of levity. How ironic. How ironic that Donald Trump's administration should be involved in anything that could be accurately described as intelligence. But there we are. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:37. The good news is that along with Cormac, many other watchers of this conflict and indeed this realpolitik are of the view that the plan, such as it is unlikely to lead to anything. Lawrence Freedman, the Emeritus Professor of War Studies from King's College London, makes that point in the rather splendid Substack that he operates with his son Sam. We've had them both on the programme in recent weeks, but that one is free, actually. So the comment is Freed with a D Substack. That one I think has been made available if you sign up for a free trial. But he writes that far too much credibility is being given to the plan, which is good news until it isn't. Because, and this is very much my own pontification, but the circumstances in which Zelensky would have no choice but to accept what is inflicted upon him by the United States and the Kremlin, the White House and the Kremlin, has not yet been reached. But I think the word yet belongs in that sentence. And remember, I grew up in Kidderminster and I live in Brentford. I have no connection whatsoever with Eastern Europe. Not until I do a DNA test and start finding out about my genetic origins. As things stand, I don't know what a Latvian feels when confronted with the possibility of swathes of Ukrainian territory and indeed sovereignty and indeed military capability being boxed up, tied with a ribbon, a bowstock on top, and sent to the Kremlin by Donald Trump. How does that land in Poland, where we know that the last consulate, or rather the government has closed its last consulate in Russia after what they describe as an act of state terrorism on their railways? Foreign Minister has closed the Gdansk consulate after 4 people were arrested for a sabotage attack. I've met Poland's Foreign Minister, would you believe, a few times. Very impressive man, Radosław Sikorski, describing that sabotage attack on Poland's rail system as an act of state terrorism ordered by Russia. So as Donald Trump is essentially saying to Vladimir Putin, hey, what do you want? What do we have to get for you off Zelensky for you to stop this illegal invasion of yours? What rewards would you like for illegally invading Ukraine? Poland is dealing with state-sanctioned terrorism on their own territory. The clear intention, Sikorski said, was to cause human casualties. So how does it reach into Polish politics? How does it reach into Eastern European diplomacy? 10:40 is the time. And for once, I'm allergic to dead cats. I don't know if antihistamines help, but I just think I developed this thing. Look, bear with me for a moment. Hazel's next and then Nick. But I'm allergic to simple answers to complicated questions. It makes me the polar opposite of a traditional phone-in host. That's not a boast, because it can be a problem sometimes. But when people say, oh, it's a dead cat, I've started bridling. But even a stopped clock is right twice a day. And the Epstein stuff is huge. And suddenly this story appears with Kremlin connivance. We're all, not all, but the news agenda, the headlines, the front pages, are all talking about this when they might have been talking about other things. So I don't know if I'm going to soften my opposition to or my allergy towards dead cats when you send me messages saying, oh, it's obviously a dead cat. It's not obviously a dead cat, but perhaps we need to occasionally entertain the possibility that it might be, because Trump is nothing if not a master of deception and distraction and dishonesty and various other hideous phenomena that begin with the letter D. But the plan is on the table, so to speak. The die has been rolled, and I don't know what it means for the rest of the world if Zelensky is somehow compelled to accept it. For the avoidance of doubt, I don't think he will be. But then the word yet appears again. Hazel is in Angus. Hazel, what would you like to say?
Well, good morning, James.
Well, hello.
I'd like to say that on the first day of the war, I called you and we had a chat. And my view has not changed at all. We should have been there fighting with the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
And to answer the question about why people are not interested, and just as an aside to that, I am a regular complainer to the BBC that they don't show Ukraine on the news.
Yeah.
And thankfully they do have Ukraine cast, which is about the only way that you've been able to get any information at all. But
I mean, this is chicken and egg, because I work in commercial media, and I wouldn't be here next year if every day I talked about the things that some people might consider to be the most important, but which response and reaction told me were not buttering parsnips up and down the country. So there is a tightrope to be walked. Public interest on the one hand, and media reporting on the other, and they actually, oddly, they feed into each other. So public interest goes down, media reporting goes down, media reporting goes down, public interest goes down. It's very, very hard to know where one stops and the other begins. Not just to defend the BBC on the grounds that we're guilty of exactly the same thing.
Yes, you're right. It's led by what you think the public want to know.
Yes.
But, we've had all these major attacks, and
yes,
they rarely even get mentioned, despite, people being killed, and despite the fact that clearly they're targeting civilians, as well as trying to blow up all their heating and so forth. And yet we stand by and do nothing. We haven't heard from the Coalition of the Willing in months, and when we do hear from them, it's just words.
Yeah.
And the lady at the beginning, who, quite frankly, really got my hackles up.
Yeah, I don't know whether she was having a bad day, but I don't think she was representative of a constituency or cohort of thought or people.
Like that. And some do, and we know that in the United States they do. We don't want to have anything to do with foreign wars.
That's true.
We need to understand that our freedoms are at stake here.
Sell that to people listening. Just you can't prove it, but sell it, that idea, because I'm agreeing with you, but I don't feel the sense of urgency that you clearly feel. If Putin is handed both impunity and rewards for the illegal invasion of a sovereign territory, we become more imperiled, even here in the United Kingdom.
We've got one of his ships threatening us in the north of Scotland.
Yes.
And, what were we doing? Last night on the news, they were in Estonia and speaking to the security people there on the Baltic.
And we've got the British politician with whom he's enjoyed a bromance for 20 years, currently leading the opinion poll. So from Vladimir Putin's point of view, everything's coming up roses.
Yes, but one, I'd like you to, I don't know if you heard him, but Lord Robertson was yesterday, and if he'd been head of NATO, I really believe things would have been different.
Gosh. But does it? I mean, I don't know how much agency the head of NATO has. He's more of a figurehead, isn't he, than a kind of...
Well, when you consider the one that's there just now, smooching up to Trump...
Yeah, that's true.
George Robertson would not have done that, and he was really clear on the dangers to all of us. And that's the problem. We just do not understand. Last week we stood in silence remembering the fallen.
Yes.
My father was in the war, and so it means a lot to me because I understand. But people just don't understand, and they don't seem to understand what the Russians are doing in Ukraine.
And they still don't.
No.
This point kind of proves that, doesn't it? I mean, so Trump doesn't care. Trump's, best mates with Mr. Bonesaw at the moment. The idea that he's got any form of moral compass is clearly ridiculous, and anybody who was possessed of a moral compass that wanted to serve in his administration either had to abandon their moral compass or decide that they weren't going to serve in his administration, which brings us to Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. Until yesterday, Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, who announced his resignation shortly after the details of this deal emerged. That speaks volumes, and in normal times would be a huge story and a major humiliation and embarrassment for the administration that he has resigned from. But Trump is comfortable, isn't he? This is the point that I think you're most exercised by. Trump is as comfortable with Putin's aggression as Putin is. If Putin went into another country tomorrow, Trump's probably not said anything about the attack on Poland.
No.
And because it's so completely alien to everything we've grown up with in the post-war period, the idea that the United States of America would be in lockstep with a rampant Russia it's almost too extraordinary to accept, and yet you've clearly accepted it and don't understand why more people haven't.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I thought so. Thank you, Hazel. I mean, there it is. And that is what, my friend Bill Browder, Sir Bill now, has been telling us on this programme and elsewhere for years. Putin's essential driving force is hanging on to all the money that he's stolen. It's no more complicated than that. And I know what you're thinking. Hang on a minute, James. I thought you were allergic to simple answers to complicated questions, but it's not a very complicated question. Why is Putin such a monster. Answer, it's what he has to be in order to hold on to all the money that he's stolen, to keep his palaces and his, and his extraordinary lifestyle intact, and his self-image, his self-regard. And to do that, and I think he is a sort of Stalinist subscriber to the notion of Mother Russia or the Great Bear of the USSR, but crucially, he just wants to keep hold of all the money that he's stolen, and in order to do that, he has to sort of keep the tank tracks rolling. He has to keep the bugles playing, and he does that by invading places. And if it's Ukraine today, and he gets away with it, he walks away from this conflict with roughly what he wanted in return for ending it, it starts again tomorrow, not just in Ukraine, but elsewhere as well. And what crystal clear to Hazel. It's crystal clear to me, but she's feeling it in a way that I'm not, and that is a failing on my part, a massive failing, actually. Because when do you realise how profound a threat is? Usually when it's too late.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:51 is the time. Do you know, Hazel there in Angus, reminding us of the very first phone-in that we did on this subject after Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine, reminded me of another call we took in that era, in that period. I think era, even by my standards, is a bit self-aggrandizing. In that era of the James O'Brien programme. It was from a lady from the Czech Republic, do you remember? And she introduced me, I possibly not you were maybe already across it, but to the lament of the Czech people in 1938 after the Munich Agreement ceded Sudetenland to Nazi Germany without Czechoslovakia's participation. And the phrase in the Czech is "o nás bez nás," which is about us without us. It comes from Latin, as many things do, if they've sort of achieved an extraordinary resonance in common parlance. But I can't remember what that... Well, hang on. Nihil de nobis. Would it be nihil de nobis sine nobis? Nothing de nobis. Nothing about us without us. And my goodness me, you can see why that lady made that point now. Because the deal on the table, albeit one that many experts contend is unlikely to go any further, the fact that it's on the table at all is absolutely incontrovertible proof of her correct prediction that this could end up in a place where the negotiations would be, from a Ukrainian perspective, about us, but without us. Nihil de nobis sine nobis. And that is why the question of what that would mean moving forward, throw the rock of this settlement into the waters, where do the ripples reach? Anne's in Barnstaple. Anne, what would you like to say?
Hello. I'm calling because I felt you were asking for people from the region to call in and share how they feel about this. So yes. I am Latvian. I live in Devon. And the fear is real. That Putin is not going to end with this piece of land that is now being agreed to be handed over. We know it too well that he's not going to be satisfied with that.
Well, any more than he was satisfied after invading Crimea.
Yes. Yeah, so we know it all too well, and it's not just my generation, it's obviously my parents who experienced it firsthand. So most of their lives they lived in Soviet Union, and I'm 45 and I was born in Soviet Union. I was 11 when it all crashed. Yes. But even me, I know it all too well that the fear is very close, and these little countries, they're too small by themselves to defend this big bully. So all the Baltic states in the first instance would be feeling that vulnerability and that fear, because essentially what the most powerful man on the planet, Donald Trump, does in the event of Zelensky, and again, I don't think it's going to come to this, but I worry that the word "yet" is the next word in that sentence. What Donald Trump is doing is essentially giving Vladimir Putin everything he wants in this instance, while somehow trying to sell the idea that means he will stop doing the things that got him everything he wants this time. Yes,
That's madness.
I think Trump administration assumes that, okay, let's
let's make a deal. Let's meet halfway. Let's do this compromise. Let's give you this little piece of land so that you're satisfied and you stop, and that's the end of the war. But it's not.
Well, we've heard this song before. I don't think there'd be a single lesson from history that would add confidence or support to the idea that this would end the aggressor's aggression. And it's not just a parcel of land. I mean, in the context of what's on the land, in terms of minerals and profits, it's far from just a parcel of land. It's a huge tranche of future income, but it's also the banning of long-range missiles, the decimating of Kyiv's military, the blocking of deployments of foreign troops, US military assistance being diluted, foreign diplomatic aircraft being banned from landing in the country, or Russian state language, Russian being made the official state language in the area, the Russian Orthodox Church being given official status in the occupied territories. These are the things that would chill the heart of Latvians and Estonians and even Poles. So Anne describes, Simon picks up on, as a dual national, James, half English, half Latvian. I can tell you exactly how I feel. Very worried and very frustrated, and that's a massive understatement. The Balts have been warning the rest of Europe for 34 years since regaining independence, but hey, why listen to three small countries, despite them being the only members of the EU who were once a part, illegally occupied parts of the Soviet Union? Every year in June, our communities organise a remembrance service in St James's Church, Piccadilly, to remember all the Baltic people deported to Siberia or to gulags in the 1940s. We invite all European ambassadors to attend, but few come. In 2022, the German ambassador actually attended, but not since. It can make me laugh in a rather dark way. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Anne. Thomas is in Worcester. Thomas, what would you like to say?
Well, do you know what? I think this is actually how my grandparents felt listening to the radio in 1945, to be honest.
Gosh.
Because, again, and by the way, we do share the saying with the Czech people, although we add a little bit to it, because for us it's needs on us business, so nothing about us without us.
Good Lord. Yes.
But essentially, well, look, this is history repeating itself, okay? And I think you really underestimate the determination of Eastern Europe, because we know what's coming next should this come to fruition, okay? There is a very common name for what happened in Tehran and Yalta in 1945, and we actually refer to these two conferences as the Great Betrayal.
Yes.
And we understand that what follows after are years of communism. You have Holodomor that the Soviets introduced to Ukrainians, killing 5 million of people through famine. I mean, even from my family's history, okay, my family's roots is actually in Lviv. And one thing that my late grandma, God bless her soul, passed down to me as a family story is when we were escaping Lviv, I used to have a sister who stayed at home to take care of our sickly aunt. And that's the last time I saw her before the Red Army came. So look, we all know what's coming in, which is why nobody's giving up. And honestly, only by respect to LBC, I'm not dropping F-words about Donald Trump around, although he can really flop off to his orange part of the world because he has nothing to say.
Well, it's not even that he doesn't know the history, which is almost certainly true, but even if he did know the history, he wouldn't care, because he makes no secret of his admiration for people like Putin. If he could, you know, or people like bin Salman, the Saudi leader, who his own intelligence services think greenlit the murder of a journalist. I mean, we are sitting here still, and I think we always will, discussing him as if we haven't yet fully grasped his pathological nature. He wouldn't have the vaguest problem with Putin moving into Poland or moving into Latvia or moving into Estonia, because he admires that sort of conduct and envies the leaders who can do it.
I think you guys are really overestimating some actors in this play and really underestimating others, because in here, the center of gravity.
I hope so. I'm talking about Trump's. I'm talking about about Putin's ambitions. I'm not talking about necessarily the plausibility of those ambitions being realised.
James, there is always an ambitious in Russia. There is Lenin, there is Stalin, there is Putin, there's going to be another in, and it's always our job in Eastern Europe to hold whatever in tries to come and kick them back where they came from. So no news flash for us. And again, please take down your pink glasses where you perceive America as any sort of relevance they still have. and take a look at the people that have been fighting Russians for centuries and will not stop them for centuries to come, because that's what we do.
Yeah, although for the last century they've done so with incredible levels of American support. So you can't unfortunately ignore that. And when that support is removed, it's not just Ukraine that is left exposed.
Would you allow me a finishing thought on that? Because
as long as it's brief, because I'm already characteristically and traditionally late for the news.
I'll go long story very short. A very similar country to Ukraine, Poland, 20 years ago would have collapsed just like Ukraine is right now.
Yeah.
But thanks to EU and NATO, Poland is not a chunk that Putin can bite anymore, easily or at all. So I think that if Ukraine survives that, joins NATO and joins the EU, this is the last time Putin has anything to say about their territories.
Well, I'm glad we end on an upbeat note. And hopefully, I mean, even though it is Vladimir Putin's biggest fan in the United Kingdom that's leading the opinion polls tomorrow, and his good mate and colleague is due to be sentenced tomorrow for accepting bribes from the Kremlin, the prospect of Ukraine joining NATO or the EU is probably the only way in which Ukraine's territorial integrity or sovereignty or safety is secured for the future generations. I don't share Tom Ash's optimism at the moment about the likelihood of that happening sooner rather than later, but I suspect it's the only real end game that a decent US president would be supporting. Tragically, we've got whatever the opposite of decent is in the White House at the moment. Oh, hang on, I know. Indecent.
James O'Brien on LBC.
5 minutes after 11 is the time. Later this hour, we catch up with events in Kent. As radio presenters' worst nightmare, Kent County Council, a blueprint upon which we can all agree we should rely in order to work out what a government led by Reform UK would actually look like. So more tidings, some of them rather urgent, from Kent County Council later this hour. From 12, of course, it being Thursday, we turn our attention to Mystery Hour. Which is a lot of fun. If you're not familiar with that part of the programme, then allow me to suggest that you're in for a bit of a treat. I got to. Can I confide in you very briefly that when I talked a moment ago about dead cats, this allergy I have towards simplism, it defines a lot of politics. There was a great piece about populism the other day which simply made the point, which I've seen made before, but never quite so pithily, that politicians who pretend or politicians who tell people that complicated things are actually really easy to understand are having a real moment in the sun at the minute. I'm not even going to list them, because if I listed them, I'd upset everybody who likes them. But you probably have in your own mind a candidate for this role, from the left or the right of recent British politics. The kind of person who tells people that things are more complicated than they realise becomes unpopular, and the one who pretends that, things are really, really simple becomes popular. And a cleverer person than me has christened that phenomenon simplism. And I talked about it in the context of dead cats. Here's a complicated question, here's a really simple answer. Oh, he's just throwing a dead cat on the table to distract from this, that, or the other. And it must be true sometimes. But I also feel it sort of burbling away in the background with regard to the question that I want to talk about next, to which the answer is obviously media, in large part. But for the purposes of this conversation, it has to be much, much more than that. Because even people who can clearly see the corrupt nature of the British media, particularly the print media, but broadcast media is doing its level best to catch up. The people who can clearly see how bent it is. I mean, to be fair, how can you live in a country that did Boris Johnson, Brexit and Liz Truss and still treats the people who championed all three of those aberrations as though they are to be trusted, to be believed, to be paid large sums of money to share their insights and opinions, and indeed to be handed the loud hailer in order to instruct and influence the population at the next big electoral test? I'll say that again. Just again, I'm not even going to list any names. You can insert your own into the space available. The people who cheer-led and championed Brexit, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss remain in the most powerful positions in the British media, despite having been proven to be absolute wombats. That's not fair on wombats. I need a new insult. It's not fair on flumps. I went for flumps yesterday, but that upsets Putin fans up and down the country. What word would we use to describe these people? And listen, I'm not going to list them by name, but there are so many of them. Could probably, without too much effort between us, we could probably get up to 100 people, moderately well-known to very well-known, who had been in favour of either 1, 2 or 3 of the following: Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and yet who retain positions of prominence right across the UK media. So when we get to the question of Keir Starmer's epic unpopularity, of course a large part of the answer is going to be the media. But I am a part of the media, and I am a tireless chronicler of how corrupt the elements we've just discussed truly are, both on an individual and an institutional level. And former Labour voters, over half of whom are now keen to see Keir Starmer hit the road, are also aware of how unfairly all Labour leaders, Michael Foot and Jeremy Corbyn on one side of the scale, right through to Keir Starmer and Gordon Brown on the other side of the scale. Tony Blair managed to plot a slightly different course, for good or for ill, but he was certainly not fated or lionised by right-wing media either, in the way that Liz Truss was. Extraordinary, really. So there is something else going on. And I hate the moments when people who feel a political kinship with me get cross with me. I don't like that, because God knows we've suffered enough over the course of the last 10 years. Being right about everything and losing every battle is an extraordinary position for people to find themselves in. And some of those battles were lost by hair's breadths, of course, except the last general election. And because that felt like the only time in 10 years when people who understand things actually came out on top, we just have to get rid of the Tories, because you can't allow another Truss or another Johnson or another iteration of delusion built upon the idea that Brexit was actually a brilliant idea, but the good one goes to a different school. And people like Dorries and Rees-Mogg being given positions of power in an actual government in a real country, presiding over actual populations and people. And the absolute absurdity, the obscenity of Gavin Williamson being Secretary of State for Defence. And whatever you say about the current government, the idea that there is any comparison to be drawn between an administration that puts Nadine Dorries in charge of culture or Gavin Williamson in charge of the army, it is palpably absurd. And it's so easy to forget how far we've come as a country as a consequence of not having irredeemable dingbats in the most powerful positions in government. Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, again, in a vaguely sane country, a vaguely normal media. The idea of putting Boris Johnson in Downing Street would have caused us all to take out a subscription to Opus Dei and start self-flagellating ourselves in Trafalgar Square for our own unforgivable idiocy. So I just want to get that on the board, all right? My position on how absolutely epically awful everything has been since 2016 is entirely unchanged. And it is between 80 and 90% of everything that Keir Starmer has had to deal with as Prime Minister. OK, maybe that's generous. 70 to 80. 50 to 75. The majority of what Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have had to deal with is a consequence of what was done to this country since 2010, but especially since 2016, which is why anybody in my line of work, in any form of journalism, who was responsible for selling austerity to the British public, for greasing David Cameron's passage into Downing Street, for bringing Boris Johnson to the most powerful position in the land, for persuading the British public to become the first in human history to actually vote to impose economic sanctions on themselves, the people who were so busy trumpeting Liz Truss's success they probably didn't even notice that their own mortgage had gone up by factors. All of these people who created the context in which the current awfulness has come about are all trying to blame it on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. They're all trying to blame it on the Labour government. I am crystal clear about that. In fact, I'm so clear about it, I'm going to say it again for the benefit of anyone who's missed it. Almost all of the problems being blamed on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves at this point in human history, at this point in the political cycle, were caused, created, or massively enhanced by precisely the people trying to blame it all on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. They didn't tell you to vote for Brexit. They didn't tell you to put Boris Johnson in Downing Street. They didn't tell you to leave Boris Johnson in charge of our COVID response. They didn't tell you that Liz Truss was a financial genius. And they didn't tell you that the international global financial crisis of 2008 was caused by there being too many libraries in Wolverhampton. All of those things were fed to you by precisely the members of the media and the political class who are now trying to pretend that it had nothing to do with them and everything to do with 15 months of trying to clear up things by the current Labour government. You can rewind live radio if you want to listen to that again. Because what I'm about to say is slightly at odds with that. But it is becoming increasingly hard to avoid the conclusion that Keir Starmer is exceedingly bad at this. Exceedingly bad. Polly Toynbee writes an article about why they are not trumpeting their own successes more. And I agree with that. But that is also a failure. That's not an excuse. That's not exoneration or mitigation. Why aren't they trumpeting their successes more? Is not an answer to the question of why is Keir Starmer so awful. It's yet more proof that he's very bad at this. It's his job to trumpet successes, and now you see why I'm resisting the idea that we're going to answer media to everything. Probably, we're living in an era where it is easier to get your message to the people without having to kowtow to press barons and media owners. It's probably an easier period in which to do that than at any point since the Second World War. I'm just using that as a milestone. I'm not suggesting that it was better before that. It's just the post-war period. Probably easier to get your message to the people now without the connivance or kowtowing to right-wing media than at any previous point. I grant you, since Elon Musk bought Twitter, that place has become a lost cause for objectivity, for truth, for honesty. But generally speaking, the proliferation of social media, the fact that you could be, any prime minister could be in your pocket in a moment, in a nanosecond, with an incredibly sophisticated ground game. You can reach people in ways that they have never been reached or reachable before. The bad guys got it really early. Cambridge Analytica, the manipulation of your Auntie Doris's Facebook page, the way in which attitudes towards immigration bear no resemblance whatsoever to statistics and evidence about immigration. All of those things are proof that you are helped by but do not need traditional media outlets in order to get your message to the people. And we know it's true because the dishonest messages, the racist messages, the propaganda messages, whether they're coming from the Kremlin or coming from Reform UK, those messages are reaching loads and loads of people, more people than ever before. But Keir Starmer is really bad at this. The thing is, those of us who were encouraged by the fact that he didn't seem to have an ideology and encouraged by the fact that he was managerial in outlook are now being forced to confront the reality that he's not very good at managing. The messes mount up on an unprecedented scale. The income tax on the budget and then no income tax rise in the budget. The Wes Streeting story last week, an entirely self-inflicted debacle, culminating in them claiming that it had nothing to do with them when everybody knows that it did. The messes, the self-made messes, do not get accounted for or explained by media bias or by an unfair political landscape. And the buck stops with Keir Starmer. It doesn't stop with Morgan McSweeney or with Angela Rayner or with the editor of the Daily Mail. The buck has to stop with Keir Starmer. And I am, as you can tell, perilously close to losing faith. And that is why I began this slightly lengthy exposition by telling you, honestly, that I hate upsetting people who haven't lost the faith yet, because you've had so little optimism, you've had so little to be hopeful about since the liars took over in the run-up to the referendum vote in 2016, and they're still in the box seat in the opinion polls. We just had that happy aberration at the time of the last general election, and we piled everything in. All the hope we had, all the optimism that we had, we just stuck it in Keir Starmer's pockets. And we gave him that loveless landslide that carried him into Downing Street. And we know the scale of the problem in front of him, and we know that the problems were largely created by people now claiming that everyone's emigrating because of him, rather than because of the consequences of 14 years of Tory rule and 10 years of Brexit insanity. Not to mention having a sociopath in charge of the country when we faced the global pandemic, and putting Liz Truss in charge of our economy because Tufton Street had so successfully infiltrated every corner of the media that you wouldn't trust them to tell you whether it was raining or not. But none of that changes the fact that Keir Starmer is very bad at this. Unless you've got a different answer to this question. Okay? Why is Keir Starmer so personally unpopular? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Why do you... And I think I want you to be like me. I don't think there's much point asking Brexit voting, Liz Truss lionising, Boris Johnson fluffing freaks why they don't like Keir Starmer, because their reasons are neither intellectual nor evidence-based. What I want you to tell me is why you, as someone who essentially voted, someone who had the highest of hopes, why you don't like it. Because, listen, 18 months in, and the vultures are circling. One MP already offering to give up his seat to Andy Burnham, and it's as if we've forgotten how he conducted himself during the last round of leadership elections, or possibly the one before. But hey-ho, why? On a personal level, and that's it, because the political is personal, whether you like it or not, the personal is political. On a personal level, Keir Starmer's personal popularity, why, and anybody who's on the doorstep will tell you that this is true, why does he excite such extraordinary animosity? And while I fully accept the media has played an enormous part in it, especially those parts of the media that have brought the country to its knees, it can't just be that. Because I'm beginning to feel it too. And it's because he's doing such a bad job. And he's even doing a bad job of telling us about the good jobs. And that is just an appalling situation in which to find yourself. So why do you think he is so extraordinarily unpopular on a personal, never mind a political level? That man, that Prime Minister, that politician, a decent bloke, an inoffensive character, a kindly man, but also the most unpopular Prime Minister that I think we've ever had, and by far the worst Labour Prime Minister this country has ever seen. Why is he so unpopular? And don't shoot the messenger, all right? I can't stop you from shooting the messenger, but I am just telling you things that are true. We're quite late for the break, apparently. One day I'll learn to use a clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
23 minutes after 11, and I don't like getting personal, but sometimes you have to. On a personal level, why is Keir Starmer so unpopular? And as part of my lifelong mission to upset everybody at some point, I like to upset... You can't upset all of the people all of the time, but you can upset all of the people some of the time. So I'm now getting messages like this. Please have some patience, James. Even you have had your mind poisoned by the right-wing press. I can't believe you can't detect the impact of right-wing propaganda on your own assessment of Starmer. So I'm looking at how they handled the perceived threat from Wes Streeting. I'm looking at how they handled the winter fuel allowance. I'm looking at how they've handled income tax increases. I'm looking at how they've handled pretty much everything that they've handled in the course of this administration, and I am seeing the evidence of my own eyes and ears. I am not seeing anything through the lens of right-wing propaganda. And I'm sorry, lads, but if you're still clinging to that carcass, you sound like a Jeremy Corbyn fan. Nothing to do with how bad my boy is, everything to do with how awful everyone else is. I can't believe we've arrived at that pass so quickly. And it will be people who were very quick to describe Jeremy Corbyn fans as being deluded and cultish, who are now looking increasingly deluded and cultish when it comes to Keir Starmer. And that's what I mean by upsetting everybody some of the time. Ben's in Benidorm. No, you're not. Anyway, carry on. That's my favourite combination of names. Whenever the Christian name is the same syllable as the location. I don't know why. It's because of that old Halifax advert. It warms the cockles of my heart. Ben, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello,
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Okay, I actually voted for him with considerably more enthusiasm than
most.
You're perhaps suggesting, or most people did. I have become...
So did I, for the record. I had high hopes. I wasn't just doing it because I wanted to get the other lot out. I thought he was going to be better.
Yeah, exactly. But I was a couple of days ago. I was back in southeast London where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I was with a few pals of mine, and some of whom had voted Tory, some of whom used to vote Labour.
Sure.
Pretty much all of whom were now voting for reform.
Good Lord.
Right. And it really appalled me. And one of the reasons it appalled me, but then I realised that what Labour's doing is that he particularly, what he does, which repulses me, is that he's absolutely ruthless with his own party. He's willing to boot out anyone, yeah? But he's a coward when it comes to the country. He won't actually do the necessary things to actually... So, ruthless with the party, coward with the country. And I think that comes across really badly. Like I said, I've got a visceral reaction to him now. I mean...
When did it start? When did it start kicking in, do you think?
I think it probably started pretty soon, actually, pretty quickly. I mean, initially I thought that the old age pensions thing and the winter fuel allowance, the winter fuel allowance particularly, I thought that was dumb, but I didn't think it was terrible.
No.
And probably that could have been argued better.
Yes, I agree with that, actually. I mean, it gets lost in the mist of time. And, of course, they have subsequently rectified the situation. But that of course, is also bad, because if it could have been argued better, they should have argued it better rather than sort of doing a massive U-turn and ending up looking good to precisely nobody.
When it really kicked in for me was when he started apparently quoting Enoch Powell, and I thought, I never, ever, ever voted Labour.
This is the country of strangers. I mean, he didn't realise he was quoting Enoch Powell, but again, the defence, he didn't realise he was quoting Enoch Powell, is also evidence of not being good at it, of badness.
Well, staggering ineptitude, isn't it? I mean,
exactly.
It's just, why didn't anyone tell you? Because, I mean, that speech was written. He read it from an auto cue, crying out loud.
Yeah.
And then it's just increasingly, so to the point where last week, this is a strange thing as well, but his message seems to be now, Nigel Farage is right about everything. Please don't vote for him.
Yeah.
That's a terrible message, right?
And that's not the media's fault. That is not the media's fault. That's what's coming out of them. We're now building our asylum policy upon the idea that immigration gives people permission to be racist, and in order to stop the racism, we've got to do what the racists want with regard to asylum and immigration.
It's utterly staggering. And the worst of it is yesterday, when I was with those pals of mine, the day before yesterday, I was with those pals of mine. We all grew up in South East 25, right? So the people that hated him from all sides, they all said the same thing. They said, I hate him because I think he's being a racist. They hate him because they think he's faking racism to get me on side.
So that's the Reform voters.
The Reform voters are saying, we don't believe him.
He's not a real racist. We want
racist.
the real deal. Racist. We want full fat racism. We don't want this racism zero that Keir Starmer's offering up. So he can't win. Yeah. And which means go down fighting for what you believe in. But how can you go down fighting for what you believe in if no one knows what you believe in?
Well, that's that's beautifully put, actually. That's beautifully put.
Well, so was yours about being a coward in the country, but ruthless in the party. I think you win, actually, Ben. I like that. And it's a grim picture that you paint. And I think Ben has made that point more powerfully than I could about why, in many ways, the voices that were full of hope at the time of the last general election are the ones that you should be listening to. And yes, you can shout media from the rooftops and unfairness, but if you do that, you are at risk of sounding like a member of Jeremy Corbyn's cult. And of course, they will be loving the failure of Keir Starmer because they prioritise their own cultish fealty over the state of the nation, never mind the state of the party. And it's bad for everybody what is going on, but some people will be celebrating it. People on the left will be celebrating it so that they can say, I told you so. And please don't mention the fact that I clearly don't care at all about the country, close brackets. And people on the right will be celebrating it because He's handed them a massive victory. He's handed the people who brought you Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and austerity, an opportunity to blame it all on someone else, i.e. him. I've got plenty of calls on this, but I haven't got a great deal of time, which makes that incredibly lengthy introduction of mine all the more ill-advised. So we may return to this tomorrow. We'll definitely return to it after the latest headlines with Dominic Ellis.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:32 is the time. 13% of the electorate, or of people polled, believe that Keir Starmer is doing are satisfied with him. And I suspect that they are all sending me messages at the moment. But I have broad shoulders and thick skin. That's fine. And I can't stop you thinking that I have also fallen victim to right-wing media coverage of this government. And I can't keep telling you to press rewind and listen to all the reasons why people who had the highest of hopes for this administration are watching them get dashed daily, because I can't reason you out of a position you haven't been reasoned into. But the question of why this figure is so low, why it is so hideously low, why the dissatisfaction stands at about 79%, is about more than policy. And it's about more than personality. It's about a combination of lots and lots of things. It's about more than media coverage. It's about more than the winter fuel allowance. I mean, Ben has touched an awful lot of nerves, and perhaps no hostages, one of my favourite correspondents on Blue Sky puts it best. Ben was great. Starmer was happy to annoy left-wing voters, liberals, disabled people, the unemployed, pensioners, anti-genocide protesters, LGBT people, rejoiners and public servants, but he won't lay a glove on the racists. But of course, as Ben reminded us, the racists don't like him either because they think he doesn't mean it. Look at all the people coming out to say, oh, I quite like the look of Shabana Mahmood. Oh, this Shabana Mahmood's all right. Stephen Yaxley Lennon is one of them. You've got Tommy Robinson, as he still likes to call himself, coming out in praise of your asylum policies. You would think as a left-wing politician you might just go, well, that's very interesting. And the idea that you reduce racism by treating immigration in exactly the same way as the racists want you to treat it is among the most... Again, I said to you at the time, I've said to you all week, I really hope she's right and I'm wrong about this. And I'm white, so I'm not going to state with my full chest that she's wrong. But it just seems a bit odd to me that you think you're going to reduce racism by doing what you think the racists want. And that brings us back to why Starmer is so unpopular. Terry's in Epsom. Terry, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
First time caller, a little bit nervous.
Well, you sounded surprised to end up on the radio there, Terry.
Yeah, I was. Well, not helped, but what I'm going to say is probably a bit ridiculous, actually.
Go on, you're in good company.
I don't like the sound of his voice.
Yeah.
It's incredibly superficial. I mean, it wouldn't make me want to vote for the Tories or Reform ever because of but I just vaguely remember a long time ago reading that they held some poll or something and people didn't vote for Neil Kinnock because they didn't like his hair or something. And I just thought, if it goes into my mind when I hear him talking, I wonder if anybody else would be.
I think it matters. I think we're ridiculous to pretend that it doesn't. It is not a coincidence that Margaret Thatcher had voice training, is it?
Yeah. No.
I mean, it matters. The public respond on a primitive level to people who would seek to lead them or people who are leading them. When did you first because it didn't stop him getting elected. But then again, it didn't stop Margaret Thatcher getting elected. She employed a voice coach after she got into Downing Street. When did you first start noticing this?
Oh, well, straight away, really. But it didn't stop me voting Labour. I still voted for them because I wouldn't vote for the Tories or Reform under any circumstances. But
that's it. I mean, it doesn't explain visceral levels of animosity and unpleasantness, but it explains a lack of a corresponding support, doesn't it? It explains a lack of passion among people that want him to succeed. If he was succeeding, you probably could overlook a slightly reedy voice, but everything mounts up together just to create this horrible situation, doesn't it?
I mean, and I don't like them, but I mean, people like Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, they've got these rich-sounding voices, haven't they? And
And you're right. You said you were going to sound ridiculous, and you haven't. You've sounded depressing, because everyone has to recognise the reality of what you're saying is that presentation matters, and voice is a key part of presentation. PMQs, is one of the only opportunities you get to see a politician in action, to see a prime minister moving on his toes, moving in real time, and even up against Kemi Badenoch, he doesn't always come out on top. I think that's part of it. I'm going to file it under presentation rather than just voice, because voice is part of presentation, but it is as if the entire package is engineered to hemorrhage hope and support that carried them into Downing Street. It's not over. I don't think for a minute that I've fully signed up to this position. I'm just being completely honest with you about where I am today. And it's not a very nice place. I don't think Andy Burnham is the answer to any of our problems. I certainly don't think anyone should be paying any attention to Clive Lewis, who has offered to surrender his seat to the Mayor of Manchester. So just bonkers. The one thing you can always rely upon the left to do is dedicate more time to biting chunks out of each other than they do to biting chunks out of the real opposition and enemy. But Wes Streeting handed a huge fillip last week. Again, if you're here to defend Keir Starmer, you have to explain to me how on earth the person they perceive as the biggest threat to his leadership got handed a PR coup in the week when he was laying off NHS staff and dealing with a doctor's strike. You couldn't make it up. And of course you don't have to. David's in Manchester. David, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago regarding Rachel Reeves and the messaging of the Labour Party.
Yes.
I was the campaigner going out.
You're on the doorsteps.
I was, yeah. And the reason I'm calling is because I cannot believe the state of the Labour Party since we last spoke and what's happened in 2 weeks.
Nor can I. I'm in a different place to where I was 2 weeks ago, just for the avoidance of doubt.
And James, what really concerns me and what really worries me about the Labour Party is that they are selling out Labour voters to try and get Reform voters in areas which they will never get them to vote. But their messaging, this week when I sat down and listened to the messaging come out from the Labour Party, and the right-wing media and the right-wing correspondents were in praise of it, it's hit a new low. And I generally believe for Keir Starmer, what he needs to do is go back to literally when he was campaigning, to go out on the doorstep, to get out of number 10, to get out of that little bubble he seems to be in, that Westminster bubble that people suddenly get in, and to get his cabinet out into the country campaigning so he can meet and greet people and listen to them of what's going on. Because there's politicians who I've got the utmost respect for. Lisa Nandy, I don't hear anything from her. I think she was always about you. She was always public.
She's a great communicator. She's not a very good culture secretary.
No, I think she's out of position there. But she's great. She's good. But there's too many.
Spot the football fan. Spot the football fan. Lisa, they're playing Lisa Nandy out of position.
But the trouble is, the whole cabinet are stuck in a Westminster bubble.
I think it's worse than that. I think it's a Twitter bubble.
Yeah, it's as though they're trying to get the sound bites. Yeah, like this thing with the plinth and the three-word phrases which the Tories started, which I hated. The thing where it's like you could literally remove some of the characters and put Tories in there, and it'd be the same thing. They're sitting there with the Union Jacks behind them, and it's literally taking over what the Tories started, and they're trying to carry that message on to say, we're scared of ruining the country.
And treating obvious bigotries as legitimate concerns. I'm going to mention Tamara in Telford. The poor woman probably winces every time I cite her as a really interesting emblem of a constituency, a cohort of voters that Keir Starmer clearly believes exist in numbers and clearly believes he can woo. And this brings us back to immigration, where so many roads lead at the moment, and that, of course, is a huge problem for them. But the people who do actually have a genuine problem with, well, what do I say now? Because if I say illegal immigration, I don't actually mean illegal immigration in the traditional sense. I mean asylum seekers forced to come here via irregular routes because of what the Tories did to the regular routes. But it doesn't matter what the reasons are for the belief. So people who truly aren't racist, they never would have been singing Nazi songs to their schoolmates or anything like that, but they have been persuaded that they don't want asylum seekers in former hotels on their patch, and that there are too many people crossing the channel in small boats, and that they don't have a problem with people who've come here via regular routes and want to work and pay taxes. This curious constituency of people, it probably does, well, it definitely does exist. They've bet the house on there being millions of people in it, and they are all reachable. In which case the question becomes, is he even reaching them?
Can I just throw something else out?
Yeah, of course you can.
As a big follower of the United States politics, because it has such a print on our country at times, I do also generally believe that the Labour Party at that level are very fearful of causing or disrupting this relationship with Trump and the United States.
Yeah.
And I think they are treading a fine line, which is now putting a footprint on this country, which we shouldn't have. And I do generally believe that whole fear of Trump and the right wing and the money that comes into this country to support the right wing, but also as well this relationship they keep saying they've got with Trump, which is great from a political and financial point, but I do generally believe that is having a significant influence on the politics of the Labour Party at that level.
It's an impossible position. It's an impossible position to be in, isn't it? Because I don't think anybody could this is where simplism becomes a problem again as well. Nobody could meaningfully argue that a UK Prime Minister can afford to, politically, fiscally, diplomatically, tell the truth about Donald Trump. You just can't. You can do it in opposition. David Lammy did, and he's still getting hit over the head for that, and now that he's in cabinet. But they're not getting anything in return.
But what I'm fearful of, it's not a matter of putting the mirror up to Trump and showing him. What I'm worried about is that Keir at the moment is putting the mirror up to the country and start telling everybody what, like Trump does, that things are different to what people are going through.
Yeah, that's
and that
true.
Includes about the immigration point. I don't hear the argument. I'm in Manchester. Immigration is everywhere. It's a multicultural. It's fantastic. I love Manchester.
So do I.
But I don't hear this fear of immigration and fear that is always put out there every single minute of the day. And the projection, it is there in communities. But the megaphone of certain areas makes it so big. And Labour has to stop reacting to the megaphone.
Well, dancing to the tune. It's dancing to that tune. And you know, again, the polling, and polling changes, but the really interesting element of it, as I've mentioned several times this week, is that it comes in second when people are asked about the country, but seventh when people are asked about their actual lives and communities, which speaks to a huge imbalance between perception and reality. And yet they've decided to go with the perception rather than explain the reality. Scott makes a very powerful point. He asks a very powerful question. At what point do we have to start wondering whether the country is just ungovernable? Which is, of course, what Vladimir Putin, Elon Musk and others want it to be. And which British politicians, the closer they are to Vladimir Putin or indeed Elon Musk, then the more likely they are to deliver ungovernability. Great stuff, David. Thank you. Bleak, but real and honest. And every caller so far coming from a position of not just having had hopes regarding the current government, but having had high hopes. And I'd put myself in that category as well. I don't know. I don't know when I'll do a phone-in about how he turns it round. Maybe that moment has passed. They won their landslide on 32.1% of the vote, largely because people had had enough of the Tories. I don't know when they run out of time, when the opportunity to be different, you get to be unpopular for a while, and then you turn things around. But I think what animates my unhappiness at the moment is the difficulty of mustering up the belief that these people, this man, can turn it around. I think it's turnable. Make no mistake about that. I also think it's a matter of national urgency that we don't lurch back towards putting racist opportunists in positions of epic power. You would hope that you just look at what happened last time, but unfortunately electorates don't work like that, and the media plays a huge part in the corruption of reality. But at some point you are, if you haven't already, you're going to say, I don't think this is the man to turn things around. Maybe you've reached that point already. Why? Have you reached that point? Why have you arrived at that conclusion? We'll be catching up in the next part of the programme. A couple more calls on this, but also the latest bulletins from that constituency or from that part of the country that we can all agree is providing a blueprint for what a Reform UK government would look like. I speak of Kent County Council, and their latest tribulations are, well, simultaneously completely unsurprising and deeply troubling.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10 to 12. No names, no pack drill, but a message from somebody who works for a Labour MP is all I'll say. Superb segment on Starmer, and so hopeful to hear from people who also seem to be as bereft as me. That's come in on my phone rather than on my inbox, so I can vouch for the job description that I just shared with you. Maybe they've been completely brainwashed by right-wing media as well while doing casework and constituency work for a Labour MP. 10 to 12 is the time. Of course, there is one corner of UK politics that gets anything but a hard time from right-wing media, and that is Nigel Farage's outfit. Some extraordinary reporting in The Guardian at the moment about various former school friends of his queuing up to share their recollections of him engaging in all sorts of sort of pro-Hitler and anti-Semitic behaviour. He's now taken to denying that. For the record, he used to say, I said some terrible things, or I said some ridiculous things. Who knows whether it was racist or not. He's now denying it, but the queue of former school friends that are recalling it is embarrassingly long. Make of that what you will. It doesn't seem to have been picked up anywhere, except, of course, in the House of Commons yesterday by Keir Starmer. But Kent County Council, make sure you put your teeth in before you say that, has been cited by Farage and all of his strange friends as the blueprint for what the country would look like in the event of them taking charge, which means we keep a close eye on it. And it means we noticed yesterday when the capital budget forecast report was made and seemed to be rather at odds with the idea that they were an example that other councils and indeed the country at large would seek to follow. Emma Corr is LBC's correspondent in the South East, and she has been looking into it on our behalf. Emma, what have you found?
Well, James, to put it straight, the council is in a little bit of a pickle. The latest figures show a projected 46.5 million overspend this year. That's 3% of Kent's entire 1.5 billion revenue budget. And just to stress, these numbers do come directly from Kent County Council's own Q2 report, which has just been published. And the biggest problem, James, is adult social care. That department alone is running £50.9 million over budget, around 7% above the plan agreed. Now, breaking that down, 22 million overspend on residential care for older people, 16.3 million on home care and community services. And on top of that, the council now admits that 20.9 million of this year's planned savings in adult social care simply aren't going to happen. Across the whole authority, in fact, only about 81% of planned savings are actually expected to be made. There are some underspends, mostly in corporate and central departments, worth around 7.9 million, and that does help then to bring that net overspend back down to 46.5 million, that figure, but it doesn't solve the core problem. Now, at the end of September, I spoke with Lyndon Kemcaran, the Reform UK leader of Kent County Council, who told me they'd been clamping down on finances through their Doge Committee, the council's equivalent of Reform's cost-cutting Doge Committee, and have made savings by paying off some debt. Here's what she told me.
Really proud of finding £40 million in savings over the next 4 years. We did that straight away. My Doge team, my Department of Local Government Efficiency, they are fast becoming worth their weight in gold. They really are. It's never been done before, as you know. I think it's a winning formula, having 3 dedicated people, councillors, to roam around inside the council and look across all departments. Because I think there's a danger of all the cabinet members working in a bit of a silo and not really knowing what anybody else is doing. The Doge team is unique in that they know what everybody's doing all the time.
So yes, they have reduced interest payments by paying off around £50 million worth of debt, but they did that by dipping into the reserves, and that leaves the council in a precarious position, really, because reserves, essentially the council savings account, are forecast to fall to 41 million by next March, and for an organisation with a 1.5 billion budget, that is quite a thin buffer, James. I also spoke to Anthony Hook this morning. He's the Liberal Democrat leader of the opposition at County Hall. He told me the council still don't know where next year's cuts are going to fall, and he's worried the financial situation could get much worse.
I've got a terrible feeling that what reform will do is spend the reserves so that they can try. They are desperate to go below that 5% so that they can say reform cost you less than councils run by other parties. And the problem with that is that if they raise reserves this year and next year, the long-term viability of the council will be in danger.
And all of this is happening against quite a significant time of political turbulence inside the council. In October, a leaked video of a private online meeting exposed infighting within Reform UK at that council. Since then, 9 Reform councillors have been suspended, 2 have been expelled from the party altogether, and 5 of the suspended councillors also sat, James, on the Kenton Medway Fire and Rescue Authority, which triggered concerns about whether the authority could continue to operate properly. Replacement appointments have actually been made since that happened. But when Reform UK took control of that council in May, Kent County Council, they had 57 of the 81 seats. Today, they're down to 48. Now, Kent County Council isn't the only council struggling with finances. Other authorities in the South East are in a similar position. East Sussex County Council, for example, is forecasting a £57 million shortfall. But for the Reform Council in Kent, the real test really is whether the council can manage this escalating financial situation while dealing with its own political turmoil and still keep council tax rises below the 5% cap, and they've committed to that. And the council admits the pressure is very real and even states in its Q2 report it will need to take what it calls necessary but difficult decisions. And of course, this morning we have asked for their comments on the situation, but are waiting at the moment for a response, James.
Well, at least they didn't tell you to suck it up, which is, I think, the tactic that the leader of the council adopted with some of her colleagues on that leaked video. I mean, you're quite right, Emma, as usual, to point out that other councils have financial problems as well. But I don't know that any other party campaigned on the idea that there was loads and loads of fat to trim. After 14 years of austerity, there would still be loads and loads of spending to cut. And you hear some of these politicians coming out, in Richard Tice's case this week, framing autistic children who wear ear defenders as a major drain upon resources, or as something that we should all be queuing up to attack. What they've essentially discovered is that these councils, or this council in particular, was already running on close to empty.
Yeah, exactly that. And as you say, they kind of went in with the mantra that they were going to cut costs, and they were the council to do that. And, you know, speaking to Lyndon recently, the leader, she did say, look, we've cut costs, we've managed to get rid of some of this loan and cut our interest. But what, of course, hasn't been exposed is the fact that they are now dipping in to their savings, and that's going to cause real problems for 2026 and the future 2027 as well.
And that best understood as a sort of rainy day fund, I suppose, in the event of crises or flooding, or I mean, some funding from central government. But the reason why councils need reserves is the same reason why households do. And you know that if the boiler blows up and you haven't got any reserves, then you've got a much bigger problem than you would have if you did. The overspend as well is, as Emma explained, up. Q1 of the year, overspend of 27.9 million, rising to 47.2 million for Q2. It's not exactly a mystery, is it? But nonetheless, that's as close as I can get to a convenient and neat segue into what comes up next on the programme. Because it's Thursday, it's just gone 12 noon, and therefore it must be Mystery Hour, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. I would list all of the people waiting to talk to me about Keir Starmer and his, I'm afraid, inarguable levels of unpopularity, but I know that we'll be returning to that subject soon, unless a miracle happens, so I won't bother apologising to you and reading out your name. I'll just remind you to ring in next time we address the same question, as we almost certainly shall. But now, it's Mystery Hour.
James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 12 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we I get to spend an hour in the shallower end, really, of our time together. The way this works is incredibly straightforward, and if you're new to this, it is a lot more fun than I generally make it sound. People ring in with questions, mysteries, riddles, some silly, some serious, some scientific, some anything but. And then somebody else will ring in with the answer, usually correct. Although we do quite enjoy incorrect answers if they're entertaining. What we use to establish whether or not the answer is correct is your qualification. So you tell us not that you've got a cycling proficiency award or a bag of gymnastics grade 3. You tell us exactly how you know the thing what you know. So you may have seen it on the telly last night. That's a qualification. Or you may have a PhD in applied astrophysics, which is why you know the thing that you've just told us that you know. That is also a qualification. If the qualification is good, the round of applause will follow. The award will be made. If your qualification, or rather if your contribution is so good that it actually delights me more than all the other contributions, then you will win a genuine prize. The Mystery Hour board game, which is hours and hours and hours of fun and illumination for all the family. You can find out more about the board game at mysteryhour.co.uk, and you can find the terms and conditions for what does actually, despite appearances, constitute a proper grown-up and altogether adult, not in that way, just grown-up, radio quiz. You can find the full terms and conditions for this prize, for this competition, at lbc.co.uk. And that's pretty much it. I mean, really, it is just a case of sitting back, lighting a pipe and enjoying yourself. If you hear somebody ask a question that you know the answer to, then call me quickly on 0345 6060973. That is how it works. Anything else, Keith, that we've forgotten, do you think? I had a couple of my own that didn't get answered, didn't I, in recent weeks? One was, why does leaving the stone from the avocado in your guacamole delay the guacamole going off? It stays fresher for longer. But then people started asking me whether or not it was true. But I read it in all sorts of august journals. I think I may even have seen Nigella claim that. It was in the last recipe I used to make guacamole. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's true. If it is true, how does the science work? We do not know. And no one gave me an answer. I thought that was a bit rude, really. But anyway, look, because we had that big hit with Emma Core before the news, it means that the switchboard hasn't filled up in the way that it usually does by 6 minutes after 12 on a Thursday. So rather than waiting until a couple of people have got on and then got off again, you could jump in now. And really, because there's a sort of 20-second delay on the programme, by the time I finish saying this, the window in which you could grab a space on the switchboard would actually have slammed shut. So do it now, or forever hold your peace. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need to get your question on the board, and then subsequently, of course, to get your answer to somebody else's question on the board. And I will remind you of the phone number in the course of the hour whenever opportunities to get yourself on the board present themselves. Well, I don't know what's wrong with the way I pronounce guacamole, but I am going to continue pronouncing it guacamole for the foreseeable future. Pat's in Reading. Pat, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on, Pat.
The question is, in American and British police programs, when they arrest somebody, even if the handcuffs are put on at the front, and they put that person into the back seat of the police car, why do they always press down on the suspect's head to make sure they sit into the back of the car?
I know
in my
this.
opinion, complete waste of time, because you should be able to get in it unless you're incapacitated.
It's your last chance to injure yourself and claim that the police did it.
Hello? Well, yes. I was just surprised by the answer.
That's 52. That's 52% of the answer. Would you like to know what the other 48 is?
Yes, go on.
If you did decide at the last moment to try to resist arrest, then that is the point of greatest danger. That is the point at which you would be most likely to injure yourself while trying to wriggle free of the police officer and abscond, to use a technical term. So it is to prevent the prisoner from injuring themselves, whether they're doing it for the reason of pretending that the police have injured them, or whether they're doing it as a consequence of trying to escape.
So they press down on their heads for that reason?
Yes.
And your qualifications of this is perhaps
I've been
you've been through the same.
I've been arrested
experience.
47 times for a dizzying array of crimes against the state.
Right. Okay.
I know the answer because I've thought about it myself, and I think at some point in the dim and distant past, either it's come up on Mystery Hour or I've asked a copper.
Well, on that basis, consider yourself ineligible to take the award for today.
Certainly not. I won't take the prize. I won't take the board game. I think it might also have something to do with the centre of gravity, so that it makes you less mobile. It would actually make your ability to run away is reduced by the fact that you've got somebody's hand on your head, regardless of whether or not they're also trying to stop you from smashing it against the top of the car. But I can tell you from my inbox, which is full of police officers, that my original answer was completely correct, as you would expect.
I will accept that as reasonable.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much, Pat. Round of applause for me, please. Cheers to you too. And thank you to all the coppers getting in touch to tell me that I'm right. There's a first time for everything. Jennifer's in Lambeth. Jennifer, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on.
So when I put my head under the water in the bath, I can hear my own heartbeat.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just wondering if I was pregnant, would I be able to hear my baby's heartbeat as well?
It's unlikely.
Well, I don't know.
Nor do I.
So
I mean, can't we just wait?
To anybody that may know.
So why can you hear your own heartbeat? Because I mean, it's not just your heartbeat, is it? It's the whole sort of throbbing pulse that you can hear. It's every, if the baby is. Does the baby have? I don't think so. No, but obviously I can't take a round of applause on this one. If you're pregnant and you're in the bath and you put your head under the water, would you be able to hear the baby's heartbeat? What we really need now, and there may be a Ray Liotta for a pregnant woman who is currently in the bath, but that is one of the strangest invitations to ring in that I think I've ever issued. I'm just slightly discombobulated by the question, but it's on the book. Why do you want to know?
I was just wondering, why can we hear our own heartbeat? I guess it's from the size of the water in the bath.
Yeah.
I don't think we can hear it in a swimming pool. And then I was wondering, could you hear it through the amniotic fluids? And at what age of the baby would you be able to hear
it? Sometimes, can't you? You can hear it at night if you've got a bit of pillow on your ear or something like that. I don't know. I like the question, but I am slightly discombobulated by it. So I don't know why. We will put it on the board and wait and see if anyone can illuminate us. I mean, who, other than a pregnant woman who has done it or is about to do it, is going to be able to tell us? I don't think you could deploy your knowledge of physics to answer this question, but time will tell. Thank you, Jennifer. Let us go to Växjö, if I've pronounced that correctly, in Sweden, where Anthony is waiting with a question or an answer, Anthony.
A question. Good morning, James.
Good morning to you.
Hi, this is a bit, you might find this silly, but we've both got a menswear background, and I was wondering, the style of suits and ties, we've had it for so long. Why has it not been upgraded? Where did it come from? And who invented, the lapels and such, who invented the first suit and tie to make it acceptable?
You're only allowed one question.
I thought it was the same question. Well,
it is. I mean, it is kind of the same question. But, I mean, the real question, if we were to boil it down to one question, is who invented or indeed wore the first suit? And by suit, we mean matching jacket and trousers.
Exactly. And the style. Like the lapels.
Oh, you mean like a business suit? We're not going pre-codpiece.
No.
Or anything like that. It's the suit as we recognise it today.
Exact.
I'm going to go with Beau Brummel. That's probably too long ago, isn't it?
Beau Brummel?
Why are you laughing at me saying Beau Brummel? He was a famous dandy.
Why did you say it?
He was a famous dandy.
Oh.
He was a contentious. Have you never heard? You call yourself a menswear veteran and you've never heard of Beau Brummel?
There was a long time ago, James.
But it was a long time ago for me. Beau Brummel was an even longer time ago. He was a menswear emblem long before you and I were born, let alone when we were still measuring inside legs and flogging whistles. Beau Brummel, I think he might have been a contemporary of Oscar Wilde's, but he was maybe a bit older than that. He's a famous Regency England, so no, going back even further, he was a mate of George IV. When he was the prince. I thought everyone knew this. There's a film about Beau Brummel. That's quite a lot further back than Oscar Wilde, I grant you.
So it hasn't come to Sweden yet. That film I'll look out for.
I don't think he did.
I just think that, we just still have the same style. You see these world leaders.
You're right.
It's the same style. And I'm just like, when are we going to change it? Where did that come from? Why is it so acceptable to stay the same?
Well, I'm wearing... The jacket I've got on today is part of a suit, but it looks nothing like a traditional suit. It's a lot more utilitarian. It looks like a sort of, as you would expect from a horny-handed son of the soil like me, it looks like a sort of... what are you laughing at? It looks like a workman's smock, but I have matching trousers that go with this top, although I'm not wearing them today. When did the suit...
safari outfit.
It's not... Well, I like a safari outfit, but I'm not quite sure I could carry one off in November.
You carry anything off any time,
You're
James.
very kind, Anthony. You're very kind. When did we start wearing the suit that we all recognise today as the suit? It's not Beau Brummel. He was still bopping great snoods round his neck and stuff like that. So the matching jacket and trousers, beloved of businessmen, you think back to early 20th century, probably, when everybody working in the city started to look and dress the same, and the bowler hat was incredibly popular to the point of ubiquitous. I like that question a lot, not just because of my roots in menswear. 2 phone lines free now. If you want to grab one of them, you know what to do. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. I don't think Beau Brummel wore matching jackets and trousers. Lots of people just saying Beau Brummel. Because if, like me, you're a big fan of trivia and knowledge and quizzes, then when someone asks a question about fashion, like you shout out on University Challenge or something like that, and you often get it right, even though you didn't know for sure the answer. It's a bit like shouting Mozart if they start playing a bit of classical music. Chances are you'll be right. You've probably got a better chance of being right with a fashion question by shouting out Beau Brummel or Coco Chanel for the ladies than you have by shouting out Mozart if it's classical music. But there are just some quizzers' answers to questions when you don't know the answer. Your educated guess, if it's a question about men's fashion, will almost always be Beau Brummel. But on this occasion, I think it's probably wrong.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Look, for the avoidance of doubt, I am wearing trousers. I'm just not wearing the trousers that match the jacket that I'm wearing, even though the kind of jacket, it's more of a shacket, but it comes with... never mind. Claudia is in Wokingham. Claudia, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
So my question is about duvets, as in like duvets on bed.
As opposed to what? As opposed to duvets where?
No, actually.
Yeah, exactly. You did not need to say duvets on bed because you never encounter a duvet anywhere else. Duvet.
A duvet.
Duvet. Go on. They never go anywhere else. Duvet. Carry on, Claudia.
Well, so I did the switch over from my summer weight duvet, so about 4 tog.
Yes. The phone line's gone. To my winter weight duvet, I could finish this question, probably, but I think it would be nicer to hear it from Claudia. Colin is in Hemel Hempstead. Colin, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Colin.
I always have a problem putting batteries into various bits of kit that I need because they have to be opposite ends of each other. So
except when they don't. Except when they don't. Every now and then you come across one where they can go the same way around. I think
I've never encountered that, and half the time something doesn't work. It's because I put the batteries in the wrong way.
There's usually a guide inside to tell you which way the plus goes and which way the minus goes.
There is usually it's a black line on a black surface, and it's a pain to see.
No, this is true, especially when you get to our time of life and the eyesight's not what it was. You haven't bought one of those fancy lights in the back of private eye that illuminates everything. Carry on, Colin.
So I want to know why batteries have to go in opposite ends to each other. Why couldn't they all just go in the same and make life a hell of a lot easier?
That's a nice question, actually. I nearly said out loud it's going to have something to do with electricity, but I think that's a given.
Probably a given, but there'd be like circuitry,
poles and anodes and getting, all of that malarkey. I like it, though. It's a nice question, one that everybody would have had. That question about suits has reminded us of do you remember the question about jackets? What was the fella's name? Was it Mike? The fellow with the jacket, the pocket. That was one of the best mystery hours in history, although also at the same time one of the worst. And we never actually came up with a definitive answer to the question, although a consensus was reached after the show on social media. If you've got no idea what I'm talking about, there's not a great deal I can do to help you. Similarly, have we got Claudia back? Oh, good. It's Claudia, not Claudia, right?
Claudia is fine, yeah.
Why did we call that storm last week Claudia all the time?
Well, it's very disruptive, makes a lot of mess. So,
but why didn't we call it Claudia?
Because that was Claudia. Maybe that's how English people say Claudia. It should be Claudia.
But it was in English. Are you German?
Polish originally.
Polish originally. So you would be called Claudia?
Yeah.
By your mum?
Yeah.
Your mum would call you Claudia?
So my mum calls me Claudia. People in the north call me Claudia. And people up north, where I'm from originally, they call me Claudia.
Claudia?
Yeah.
Claudia.
Claudia.
I didn't understand why in England we called the storm Claudia, because you would have a news bulletin ending having told us about what was going on Storm Claudia, and then they would say, and now it's time for the traitors with Claudia Winkleman. Anyway, that's just me being a bit confused by pronunciation. I'm sure there was a reason for it. You were talking about duvets.
Yeah,
they do
duvets.
that, don't they? They do that, don't they? Carry on, Claudia.
So what do hotels do? So what type of duvet do they plump for? Because if they go for the winter weight duvet, then surely everyone will be too hot. If they go summer weight, then that's not quite appropriate. But then if they go in the middle, then everyone's either going to be a bit too hot or a bit too cold.
So do hotels change duvets in the same way that you do?
Yes.
Is the question.
I don't think that's feasible, but yes, that's the question. What does a hotel do?
It's an interesting question. I was staying in a hotel, would you believe, on Monday night. After a function that I attended, a rather delightful function. And it did occur to me that you always have heating and air conditioning in hotels, and you don't worry about turning it on in the way that you do at home.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that would be pertinent. Also, it's increasingly hard to open the windows in hotels, particularly fancy schmancy ones in Leicester Square, where you can open it about 1.5 inches. So would they have like an entire attic full of duvets that they would swap around each year? I don't know.
Potentially, but
well, it's on the board. Do hotels swap duvets? But I've also received many answers to my question, which I'm surprised you didn't know, Claudia, given that it is your actual name. The storm was named by Spanish meteorologists.
Oh, there you go. That's what originated in Spain and Portugal, didn't it?
Well, you would know that. I wouldn't, because it's not my name. But there it is. That is why it was pronounced Claudia, because it was named by people who pronounce it Claudia. Thank you very much. How do you pronounce guacamole?
Guacamole.
That's brilliant. Yeah, well, thank you very much. 22 minutes after 12. The producer says it's guacamole. Guacamole? How does a Mexican say it? I think Claudia's just told us. Tiago is in Bristol. Tiago, question or answer?
As an answer, James, about the guacamole.
Great. Say it again?
I say guacamole.
Guacamole?
Yes.
That's what I say. Not guacamole. Guacamole.
I mean, it do have a bit of a Latin flair to it, but...
I think it does. Anyway, go on. What's the answer to the question? Why does the stone keep it greener for longer?
Well, that's... If the stone is blocking the oxygen on where it's sitting, the area immediately below the stone will be green, but it won't do anything else for the rest.
Is that it?
Of the guacamole. Yes.
So if you put a thin layer of cling film across the whole top of the bowl, that would have the same effect?
You just go ahead of me. I was going to say there's a solution to stop that. A little bit of lime juice as well helps
absolutely.
Oxidation slow down, but the pit itself just blocks the air where it sits immediately. It does not have any magical powers to stop it down.
I actually don't believe you.
Well, we run tests. I've been trying to find a video to send to you. It's probably lost to the internet. You might recall my call about Terry chocolate oranges a while back. I used to work on food advertising and content, so we used to do things like, little tips and whatnot, and we run tests.
Yes.
And it's on camera somewhere, lost in the in the depths of the internet. But yes, it does only keep the part immediately below the stone green because it's blocking the air.
So you could stick anything in there. You could put a golf ball in there and it would have the same effect.
Very much so, but I guess you don't want the microplastics, do you?
How depressing.
Sorry to bust your bubble.
I thought it had some scientific properties.
Not on the stone itself, no. So
great answer though, and you could use any citrus, lemon juice, lime juice. Although I think a proper recipe, an authentic guacamole recipe, would involve lime juice.
Yeah, it would be the kind of greenish limes, you know.
A bit of tomato. I put a bit of very finely diced tomato in mine as well. Fresh chili, lime juice.
Do you know what goes on mine at times? If I use pickles, I use a little bit of the pickle water. I find that it gives a little bit
jalapenos.
Yes, exactly.
That's
just
nice.
a bit of that. I mean, I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I did work in hotels for many years when I first
Don't
came
answer
to
the
this country.
duvet question. Don't answer the don't go there, Tiago. Don't go there. You've already got a round of applause. You're on TikTok, mate. You're live on TikTok at the moment. I forgot to mention that again this week. You can see it.
I should join.
Round of applause for Tiago. We know your qualifications: food tech or food photography. There it is. I did a recipe the other day that involved putting jalapeno peppers in the blender. It was an Indian recipe. There you go. Daniel's in Welling Garden City. Daniel, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Gosh, go on then. Hello.
It's an answer to the question about batteries.
Oh, yes, old Colin.
Yes. So the batteries go in opposite ways because they are connected in series. So you'll have the start of the battery, like the positive side, and the other end to the negative, which joins onto the positive of the other one, and then back up to the negative. So it's like a chain.
Like a circle?
Yeah, like a circle.
A circuit, if you like.
Yeah, and what that does is it will double the voltage. So the little, like a AA battery is about 1.5 volts.
Yeah.
So when you join two of them together like that, it will make 3 volts.
What would there be? Well, I mean, on the rare occasions that you encounter a remote control that has them sitting the same way round, that does happen, doesn't it? Or do you think it doesn't?
Do you think in a line? No, it won't.
Is that an actual impossibility? A scientific impossibility?
No, it's possible, but instead of doubling the voltage, it would double the capacity because they'd be connected in parallel.
And what would that mean?
It would mean it would last twice as long.
So it would make sense in a different remote control that didn't need as much power, but would last twice as long.
But you would just use a single bigger battery for that.
Yeah, all right, clever clogs. What are your qualifications?
I am a battery engineer, but for forklifts and things,
really?
Which is the same concept, but with forklifts it's a much bigger battery, but they are normally joined in series. So in a forklift, you've got each cell is 2 volts, but they all join together in series to make 48 volts.
Right. Gosh. Is this Ohm's law?
It's osmosis.
Keith's having another Kit Kat. I'm going to give you a round of applause. I like that. I presume that there are quite a few battery engineers up and down these islands.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. There's more than one in Welling Garden City, let alone the entire country.
No way. I'm the only one in Welling.
You're not the only one in Welling. That's an absolute load of nonsense. You're not even close to getting a radiator, but it was a particularly pleasant qualification. Go on then. Round of applause. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. 28 minutes after 12. I'm disappointed about the avocado question, delighted with the batteries question, still waiting on the duvets question, particularly intrigued by the suits question, and still a little bit puzzled by Jennifer's question about whether or not a pregnant woman could hear a baby's heartbeat when they stuck their head under the water in the bath. If you've got the answer to any of those, 0345 6060 973. If you've got a question of your own, there's still plenty of time, and for the time being at least, a little bit of room on the switchboard for you to get your question on the board. Once again, the number is 0345 6060 973. Marisa is in Potter's Bar. Marisa, question or answer?
Good morning, James.
Good morning,
I have a
Marisa.
question.
Carry on.
Okay, so last week I was listening and there was a question about what makes somebody good at singing and not.
Yes.
So I was wondering if the same principle applies to artwork or painting, drawing.
What a great question. Was it singing or was it impressions? Which way round was it? I can't remember.
Well, it started off with singing.
Right.
And then it went on to impressions.
Because if you were really good at impressions, you'd be a good singer because you're deploying the same sort of parts of your ear and brain to reproduce. And you thought the same about drawing and painting?
I did, as I was driving.
Those are the two things I can't... Well, I mean, there's lots of things I can't do. But the things I really wish I could do would be art and music. I wish I could sing and I wish I could draw and I can't.
Okay.
All right.
So,
I'm just sharing with you. You don't sound very sympathetic. I thought you might have just done a bit of an Orville, the bird. So I went, I wish I could paint, but I can't. And then you'd have been Keith Harris and you'd have gone, you can. And I'd have gone, I can't.
Well, you can. I'm a great believer that we all have skills and talents. We just have to find them.
I wish I could fly right up in the sky, but I can't.
Well, I think you can, James.
I can't.
I really do. No, yes, of course you can. If you sit there with some paper and some bits, some art
I even try
media.
the internet stuff where it says do 2 fried eggs and a broomstick or something, and you'll end up with a face. Can you do it? Can you paint success?
I can. A long time ago, I had a really good place at an art school, but I didn't get there. And then, as you know, with time takes you down different paths.
It does,
but I've
yes.
just recently, in the last couple of years, started it again, and I'm absolutely loving it. And so are others. So,
what's your favourite medium?
Oh, gosh, I've tried lots of different things. I would say acrylics at this point.
Okay. Now, can I just point something out to you?
Please do.
So when I was asked, when you were sharing stuff with me then about your journey, did you hear how interested and engaged I sounded?
I know.
Yeah. So when I was sharing stuff with you about my journey a moment ago, and you just went, oh, right, fine, interesting.
No, I tell you why.
What?
There's a reason for that,
Go on,
James.
then.
Because this morning, I've been to the gym, I've been to see a couple of friends, and I got home, and it's like, I'm on my way up to Clacton in any bit now.
I'll tell you who you won't see there.
Right, so I said to my daughter, I I want to get onto LBC and ask a question.
Oh, yeah.
So I put on the radio, and I thought, okay, you're on. And then I was trying to call you.
Right.
And the lady
Just stay there a minute. Just stay there a minute. The news will follow shortly. Carry on, Marisa.
Right, so the lovely lady I spoke to, she said, okay, what's your question? She said, okay, we'll call you back if we want you. I was like, oh, okay. So I was telling my daughter, and she said, oh, they probably won't call you back. And within a minute, you called me back. So that's why I'm really quite excited.
Oh, I see. I'm too excited to treat me with basic politeness and empathy.
So I'd like to start that again, James.
That's okay. That's fine. I know what you're really like. And I know that's not the real you, the one that was just dismissive of my sort of slightly plaintive admission that I wish I could draw, let alone fly right up in the sky, but I can't. Amelia Cox has got your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:35 is the time. I'm available for... no, I'm not. I was going to say I could do sort of, appearances as playing the role of Orville the bird, but especially if you've just tuned in, you'll have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. Tony's in Worthing. Tony, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on.
Okay, I'll cut to the chase.
Carry on. Or the quick, I don't mind. One or the other. They're both good.
So why do flea bites itch? Now, I'll elucidate slightly. Now, I've got 2 lovely cats who bring me lots of things, mainly livestock.
This is you cutting to the chase, is it?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
All right, carry on.
Believe you me.
Tell me more about your cats and their predatory ways while cutting to the chase.
Yes. Currently they're bringing me fleas at the moment.
Right.
And last night I got bitten by one in the middle of the night. And goodness me, it itched and was quite painful. So I'm wondering, not the mechanism, I understand why a flea bite might physically itch, but what's the advantage for flea kind of being alerting its host to the fact that it is actually drawing blood from it?
You just confused me a bit towards the end there. So why does it itch scientifically, essentially? What does the flea do, or what benefit does the flea get from whatever it is that makes you itch? Because I know the answer to one of these questions.
Well, no, because the itching bit is obviously a physical bite, and that there's an exchange of fluids, and that probably just keeps the blood flowing and all that sort of stuff. But why does it signal its presence by making you itch? Surely,
because you can't have one without you can't have one without the other. So what happens is that flea saliva has a sort of anticoagulant in it, which means that it won't scab over quickly and the flea can fill its boots. But your body responds to that as a sort of irritant or something that you're allergic to, which is why it itches. So that's a hive. So two things are true at the same time. It is making the flow of blood stronger or longer. but it is also, your body is then responding by saying alien invasion, and sending antibodies or histamines to the site of the bite.
Yes, but in terms of evolution...
The minute you said you were going to cut to the chase, I thought to myself, we're going to be here till Sheila Fogarty sits down in this studio.
Yeah, in all probability.
Yes.
But if evolutionary-wise, in terms of evolution, the actual signalling of its presence, presumably it's been here, the fleas have been evolving for, forever.
Yeah.
That you should have, surely a silent biter would be evolutionary.
I don't know. You're changing the parameters of the question now because, I've told you why it happens and you've said, yes, but they'd be more evolutionary effective if it didn't happen. Have you ever seen a flea?
Yes, of course.
How much blood do you think they can How much blood do you think they can imbibe?
It doesn't matter. It's enough. It hurts.
Yeah, exactly. One bite is enough for a flea. They're not going to achieve any evolutionary advantage by not creating an itch when they bite a human.
Yeah, but human fleas don't exist anymore, do they? In real terms, it's only cat fleas.
Cutting to the chase again, isn't it? We're now just talking. So, why do flea bites itch?
Notwithstanding,
no, but that's not. You see, you did it. I should have cut you off at the beginning because as soon as you said that, that's not even the question you're asking, is it? You're not even saying why do flea bites itch. You're saying why haven't flea bites evolved more effectively?
Yeah, I said it in exactly that voice. As well, yeah.
You didn't. I'm being mean. Thank you, but I'm not putting that on the board. Len's in Bedfont. Len, question or answer?
Oh, hello. It's a question.
Carry on, Len.
I was just wondering if there's an actual last person in line for succession to the throne.
We've gone from that's a perfect question. Give him a round of applause, Keith.
Oh, thank you.
You're in very real danger of winning a board game, Len. I have to warn you. Who is the last person in line to the throne?
Yeah.
But what if they've got a little brother?
Well, that's it. Does it go on forever? And there's like 1,000th in line to the throne?
Could be you, mate. It could be you, Len.
That's what I'm asking.
It could be you. I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that question because we can all do little sums, line of succession. And what's her name? Zara Phillips's children, Zara Tyndall's children. They come quite far down the list now. They're primogeniture no longer. Yeah, who is? Yes, it's a perfect question. If it hasn't got an answer, it's still a brilliant question.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, you're very welcome. I love that, Len. I love that question. Who is last in line to the throne? And if we've had it before, I don't even want to know. Don't spoil my moment. It's such a beautiful question. Give him another round of applause, Keith, will you? Lovely start. Oh, well done, Len. That's never happened before. 2 rounds of applause for a question. You just made history. Carl's in Doncaster. Carl, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on, Carl.
No pressure after that last question.
Wasn't that a brilliant question? Don't worry, though. Lightning doesn't strike twice. And I'm sure your question's very good as well. But I know, and you know, that it won't be as good as Len's.
Yeah. Well, I'll have a go. And I'll cut to the chase.
Yes.
I was thinking about...
Don't stop it. Carry on.
I was thinking about prize bingo at the seaside and how they usually put words with the numbers.
Yes.
E.g. Downing Street number 10, which is a pretty obvious one. Clickety-click 66. I think probably to do with the rhyming.
Two little ducks.
There's one that's always... Yep, 2 little ducks 22. There's one that's always bugged me, and it's Kelly's eye number 1. I want to know who's Kelly and what's her eye got to do with number 1.
No, that's a lovely question, actually. I thought we were going to spend a little bit longer running through the ones that we can remember, but it occurred to me that probably Two Fat Ladies has been cancelled, has it, for 88? You're probably not allowed to say that anymore. Kelly's eye number 1. Why? Who was Kelly? I've got a feeling we've done that before. But
it wouldn't surprise me.
That wouldn't surprise me, but if I can't remember and you weren't listening, then did it actually happen?
Yeah.
You're on the board.
I'd like to know the answer. If there's any others that anybody can play, I think Brighton line 59, that's another one.
I did bingo once. So somewhere in the annals of, I did it professionally. I need to rephrase that. I covered a bingo hall once. It's somewhere in the annals of Anglia Television. There's a cellar in Norwich containing tapes of my very short-lived late-night celebrity chat show. And we were a little bit short on celebrities, so we started doing things like going on visits. And for reasons that have completely slipped my mind, one week we went to the local bingo. They take it very seriously, don't they, Carl?
They do. I think you're starting to sound a little bit like Alan Partridge, though.
Well, a little bit like Alan Partridge, mate. I was presenting a late-night television show on Anglia Television in Norwich, and I went to the bingo. I think Alan Partridge might have got his ideas from that period during my career, but it will exist somewhere. Dobbers. I remember the Dobbers. We'll find out for you. Thank you, Carl. Richard is in Dublin. Richard, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on.
So it's an answer to the duvets question.
Do that.
Yeah. So most hotels now have.
Hang on. For people just tuning in, the question was, human like families, we often change our winter duvet and our summer duvet according to the seasons. But when it comes to hotels, do they?
No.
Oh.
Because they're mostly air conditioned now,
Yeah,
so the
that's what I
temperature
said.
in the room remains the same all year.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Qualifications?
I work on hotel door locks, your key card systems.
Oh, nice. And I suppose that the year-round duvet it's neither particularly heavy nor particularly
No,
light. It's a sort of
it's a medium
mid-table,
duvet.
a mid-table
Yeah.
duvet, a medium duvet. I like that a lot, and partly because I think I guessed correctly, but you've gone definitive, and you get yourself a round of applause.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely stuff. Dan's in Southfields. Dan, question or answer?
Morning, James. Love this question.
Go
Love
on
this
then.
question.
Which one? I don't know which one. Which one?
It's the flea.
Oh, don't
Flea.
encourage him.
Flea.
Honestly. Go on.
I know it's science, your specialist subject.
What is it then? A bit cheeky. I meant don't encourage Tony, because it was. Anyway. What's the answer? Why do flea bites itch?
You're going to love this. It's not the flea. It's your reaction to it. It's your histamine that reacts to the bite.
Yeah.
Which is why some people say, "Oh, I never get bitten," and other people go, "Oh, I always get eaten alive."
Yeah.
It's not. They both get bitten the same. It's just that your body reacts to it in the way that some people react to pollen, say, and they have
I think I said that.
Well, this is why this is why they pay you the big bucks.
Well, and the reason what it's reacting to in the flea's saliva is the thing that stops the blood from scabbing over, that keeps the blood flowing for longer.
Exactly right, or the anaesthetic, or absolutely. And I'm pretty sure this is true because this is all coming off my head. So just a thirst for knowledge. But I'm pretty sure that when you get a really annoying one in the room and it's flying around and you want to kill it and you can't.
You mean a mosquito rather than a flea?
Yeah, a mosquito rather than a flea.
Yeah.
The same principle.
Of course.
But with the mosquitoes, my understanding is that it's only the females that bite you, and you can only hear the males, or vice versa. I think it's that way around.
Oh, that's quite interesting. It could be completely hokum. This you've admitted that. You've just shared it with.
Well, I'm scavenging the sort of.
It's good. Eleanor is convinced that some people get bitten more than others.
Exactly, which is not true.
I think you're right. I think we had a question recently, and if you live in a country where you get bitten a lot, you will build up a better resistance, and you'll start itching less. You'll get less.
I don't know, because I think it's like an allergy now. Really? All right. Well,
I think you will. Well, it's kind of like aversion therapy, isn't it? You probably start create. I don't know either, but
I wouldn't recommend that with.
No, I wouldn't want to test it out, would you? So, okay, round of qualifications.
Just an interest in knowledge, just a thirst for knowledge.
A thirst for knowledge. Did you go to St Martin's College? Give them a round of applause. 12:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 12:49. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Questions that still need answers. If a pregnant lady, listen, it's not if you're just tuning in because you hate me and you love Sheila and you don't really know what mystery hour is, questions can sometimes be very silly and sometimes very serious, as I'm about to prove. If a pregnant lady in the bath sticks her head under the water, can she hear her baby's heartbeat? When did we start wearing suits in the conventional, modern, acceptable sense of a lounge suit or a business suit? Done the duvets, done the batteries, done the avocado. What determines whether people are good at painting or not? We did it with singing last week, and it's the same mystery, isn't it? Why can some people look at Keith and draw a picture of Keith, whereas if I tried to draw a picture of Keith, it wouldn't even be funny. It would just be ridiculous, and it would look nothing like him. We've done the itchy fleas, and please, someone tell me who is last in the line of succession to the British throne. And finally, who's Kelly? And what happened to his eye, or her eye, in the context of number one, Kelly's eye, when you're at the bingo. Dave's in Croydon. Dave, question or answer?
I have an answer, or as good as you're going to get to the soup question.
Aye. Go on, then.
Yeah. You can't actually say, like, this person invented it, or this company, this tailor. It was a style thing. Beau Brummel invented the trouser.
Right.
From breeches to the trouser, but as you say, that was a lot earlier.
Yeah.
What we would wear as a suit today, a jacket and trousers like cut just sort of below the hip, that was sort of end of the Edwardian era. The Edwardian era, they wore their jackets longer, almost down to the knee.
Yes.
And as styles changed, waistcoats went out, and then hence the jacket developed that little pocket on the breast and the buttonhole, which was for a fob watch.
For your watch, yeah.
Before the the sort of wristwatch came in, and it all come along around about the same time, pre-First World War.
So surprisingly recently, and there's not one person that sort of takes the credit for it.
No, it was a style thing. I mean, if you look at jackets in the Victorian era, they had lapels and collars. They were just a lot bigger.
Yes.
And things just got smaller and shorter. Like, if you say things like Peaky Blinders and stuff like that, the older men will be wearing longer jackets because they're wearing what they wore when they were younger. They're wearing Edwardian stuff. The younger fellas are wearing jackets like we would wear modern today, because it's the more it's the fashionable.
And
it was just really a development.
Things go up and down, don't they? Like flared trousers and the size of lapels, and even ties, kipper ties.
Exactly, we were back to longer jackets in the 50s.
That's
some
right,
people
with the Teddy Boys as well.
The Teddy Boy jackets.
Quite an Edwardian silhouette, although the
fashion is a loop.
Fashion is a loop. What are your qualifications?
I'm just a long-time collector and lover of vintage clothes. I've been wearing them since I was a teenager. Yeah.
Any particular
I'm into
era?
rock and roll. Yeah, 50s.
So you dress like a Teddy. You are a Teddy Boy then, are you?
I do have a Teddy Boy suit. Yeah, but mine's handmade. But I've got a lot of vintage stuff. I sort of try and model. I've always tried and modelled my wardrobe on a young Elvis, like the sort of sport jackets and peg trousers.
I'm picturing you, not in a weird way, but I presume you also like a bit of Brill cream.
I do. I've still got some here. Yeah, it's going a little bit, but I've still got some, and I can still do a quiff. Yeah,
I love a quiff.
At the moment, I'm wearing like big turned-up jeans and a World War II flying jacket, because it's a bit on the chilly side.
Fantastic. I get it. I completely get it. And this is entirely pleasure. It's not business at all. You're not.
Yep. No, I'm not a dealer in clothes. This is just me.
Just love it.
I just love the rock and roll era, and I like to do it every day.
I feel bad now for playing that record before you came on. As a rock and roll purist, that must have been like fingernails on the blackboard for you.
It was a little bit, but I do remember it, mate. I'm sort of a little bit older than you, but I'm of that age.
It's a massive song. Hey, take a round of applause, Dave. I love that.
Thank you.
If I had a normal job, or if I just had a bit more time in the morning to get ready, I'd love to get back into clothes again. I really would. Working in menswear I can tell, I've told you this before, I can spot someone if I walk through the West End. And to be fair, when I worked in menswear, most people wore suits to work anyway, and that's not even true anymore. But the attention to detail that you can tell somebody like Dave enjoys, it's a wonderful thing. Carl's in Exeter. Carl, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on.
It's the answer about who is the last person in the line of succession.
Oh, yes.
And the answer is probably nobody actually knows, but there is one person that is named in the latest list that was produced.
Go on.
And that person is called Karin Vogel.
Really?
Yes.
Who is she?
No idea. She's either 4,973rd or 5,753rd, depending on which list you list. And it's somebody's only ever done it a long time ago in the thing.
Qualifications?
It all comes back to one person.
Yes.
Everybody who is in the line of succession is a direct descendant of Sophia of
Brunswick.
Brunswick.
Is it Brunswick?
Who was George I's mother.
Why? Why did we pick her?
Because that was the Act of Settlement in 1701.
Good Lord.
And somebody did a genealogy thing where they traced loads and loads and loads of people, and it was updated.
And it would be like the TV shows, in that some of the people who were being told they were descended from Sophia of Brunswick would have had no idea they were descended from Sophia of Brunswick.
And some people have married Catholics.
Yeah.
And therefore disqualified themselves, although not disqualified themselves based on the latest set of legislation. And it's all over the place, really.
It is, but that is how do you know this? What are your qualifications?
My qualifications are, I asked the question of who all our royals were descended from at a quiz a couple of weeks ago, and the supplementary question was, who is the very latest person, the last person on the list?
Wow.
So I did the research for a pub quiz.
And here you are.
And you asked the question.
That's just
didn't ask the question.
I bet you were punching the sky when this one came up, weren't you? Get in.
I'm going to go grab my notes.
And that is allowed because you've done the research already. Round of applause for Carl. Lovely stuff. Where is your pub quiz, Carl? Have a free advert if you want one.
It was 2 weeks ago, and it was for the Exeter Food Bank.
Oh, lovely.
And we raised £530 odd and a trolley full of food for the food bank.
That's fantastic.
And there's a Just Giving page. If you look for Exeter Food Bank Just Giving, you can give more money if you want.
There you go. Look at that. Thank you very much indeed. What a great answer. Chris is in Hemels Hempstead. Chris, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on.
It's to do with the Kelly's Eye question.
Yes.
My understanding that I've been told, having played a lot of bingo, is it refers to Ned Kelly's helmet. It had a slot for him to see through, and it resembles the number 1.
Oh, I quite like that. Qualifications?
I played a lot of bingo in Australia and asked the question of several people because it confused me too.
You played a lot of bingo in Australia?
Yes.
I can't wait for your autobiography to come out. Have a round of applause on me.
I'll send you a copy.
Do you know, I did that joke once. Do you know this? I did that joke once on air. Someone was being quite boring. No, Chris was not being boring. I want to make that absolutely clear. But someone was actually being quite boring and a bit Brexity. And I tried to hurry them up. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll have to wait until your life story comes out to find out the rest. Can we get back to the question that we were having? And he said, actually, I sent you my life story last year and you never replied. That was quite an embarrassing moment on the radio. We're nearly done. James is in Oxford. James, question or answer? James. It wasn't just like he wasn't there. It sounded like it was completely dead. I can't go back to Chris in Hemel Hempstead. That'll have to be it then for this week. What did we do? We didn't get the... I think he was going to answer the question about pregnant ladies in the bath. We did the suit. We did the duvets. We did the batteries, the avocado. We didn't do the painting. We did the Succession. The Succession was a superb answer. I think I'm going to have to give him the board game, aren't I? Because, I mean, he loves quizzes. I'll probably get a letter off him next week saying there's mistakes in the board group. I'm going to give it to Carl. Or Len. Oh, heckers. The person who asked the question or the person who answered it? You decide. What do you think, Keith? Person who asked it. Your voice has gone up several octaves, Keith, all of a sudden. All right, give it to Len. If he wants it. If he doesn't want it, give it to the fellow who answered the question.
What was the question?
Who is last in line to the throne?
What was the answer?
Karen Vogel.
Who's she?
Exactly.
She's at home.
Exactly. She's a German therapist who is directly descended from Sophia of Brunswick.
Ah.
That is official. There you go.
So it's not either of us then?
Well, I don't know. Unless they recount. It's unlikely, though, isn't
Irish
it?
throne?
Yeah, Brian Baru. I'm closer than you
I'd
are.
make a great
I'm
Irish
adopted,
queen.
so if they were going to go all genealogical on it, I'd be in the bogs of Wexford. That is it from me for another today. If you missed any of the show, you can listen back on Global Player or on the LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinions, put your news categories in the order you want, pause live radio, rewind live radio, listen to a range of podcasts. I'm off to interview Martin Shaw. I've been waiting ages to get Martin Shaw on, full disclosure. You'll be able to listen to that one soon.
My mum had a crush on him.
Oh, that's what I'll open with.
I think you should.
I shall. Download the official LBC app from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.